Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you're watching What If Kid Naruto Found Ancient Spirit through Fuinjutsu. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Naruto, Naru and Haku sped towards the source of the explosion, thoughts of its cause and Naruto's strange linguistic mishap in their minds. They soon found that there were less trees around them, the remaining vegetation disappearing altogether as they got closer. They jumped from the trees to the scarred ground, seeing a large plume of smoke rising into the sky. Abruptly, Naruto stopped, Naru and Haku almost crashing into his back trying to slow down. They peered over his shoulders to see a crater before them, reaching deep into the ground. The two kunoichi were almost sent to the ground when Naruto blurred out of sight, reappearing on the side of the crater as he ran down it, using chakra to stick to its scarred and burnt surface. He disappeared from view as he ran straight into the smoke cloud. Ready to combat whatever lurked within. He stopped, however, when he saw two silhouettes in the smoke, one tall and standing upright while the other was crouching, fatigued, on the ground. The thick smoke cleared eventually, revealing the identities of the two figures, causing Naruto to grin. Training hard, I see, Sasuke? What have you been teaching him, Kakashi-sensei? Oh, this and that, Kakashi said with an eye smile. Have to get him ready to face that Suna Nin, Gaara. Do you still expect him to win? You doubt me, Dobi? Sasuke asked, glaring at the blonde boy. Knowing you, I have every reason to, but no, I simply fear for you. Fear? You don't understand what Gaara is capable of. He could crush every bone in your body with a second thought, and I think you'll need those bones if you want to revive your clan. Just don't train too hard. You'll only have a week to recover, and by the look of this crater, if something goes wrong you'll need much longer than that. Don't count me out yet, Dobi. I'll beat that desert rat and then I'll be facing you, and I promise, I will show you why the Uchiha were considered the greatest. Perhaps too great, Kakashi thought, reminded of a certain Mangekyo user. Well, keep I down, will ya? Others have to train too, and I can't hear myself think over all this. Whatever, just get out of here. Very well, I will leave you to spend some quality time with your new hole, Naruto said with a bow. Sound Nin's hotel room. You want me to pull out? Kabuto asked, kneeling to his master. Indeed, Kabuto, I will need you for the invasion. I can't have you waiting around for your match when you should be preparing, Orochimaru said, now changed out of his Auto Junin attire. And what of Yoroi and Masumi? They are too weak from their battles in the preliminaries to be of any use. Actually, I can think of one, very special use. The Edo Tensei. Yes, they will make fine sacrifices. The leaf will live for 7 days and 7 nights, then it will burn and the sound shall rise in its place. 1 week later. Welcome all to the final round of the Chunin selection exams. We have an exciting lineup today, ranging from the last Uchiha to the pride of the Hyuga. Would the 9 finalists please gather in the center of the arena in order to begin the matches? A Junin spoke into a megaphone. The 7 genin gathered in the center, making the new proctor, Genma Shiranui, raise an eyebrow. Hey, aren't there supposed to be 9 of you? He asked, chewing on the senbon hanging from his mouth. We have just received word that Kabuto Yakushi of Konoha has withdrawn from the final round, the Junin from earlier said. It all adds up then. Okay, so this is how this is gonna work, Genma said to the genin, pulling out a piece of paper from his pocket. Since the Yakushi kid quit, there'll just be 4 quarter-final matches, then 2 semi-final matches before the final. If you were to win the tournament, it doesn't mean you'll actually become Chunin. That decision is up to the dignitaries presiding over the matches today. By this method, anyone can become Chunin regardless if they win or lose. They simply have to impress the audience. Any further questions? Yeah, I got one. Where's Hayate? Neji asked, noticing the absence of the coughing ninja. He's incapable of fulfilling his duty in his present state. So I'm taking over if that's all. Let's begin. First match, Uzumaki Estacado Naruto of Konoha versus Hyuga Neji of Konoha. All those who are not participating please exit the arena, Genma said. Still chewing on his senbon, the other 6 genin left the arena, leaving Neji and Naruto alone. Neji glared at the blonde Jinchuriki, his pale eyes eyeing every inch of his person while Naruto was gazing off into the distance, obviously uninterested in the fight. Hajime. Neji rushed forwards, thrusting forwards a glowing palm which Naruto sidestepped. The pale-eyed Nin spun round, aiming another palm at the back of his head. Naruto ducked and punched Neji in the stomach, making him double over while Naruto quickly kicked him in the face, sending him flying backwards. Naruto crossed his arms, staring at his opponent in disappointment. Is that it? Is that all the great Hyuga clan has to offer? I must say, that reputation is undeserved if this is all you can throw at me. Hold your tongue, peasant. You know not of the Hyuga clan's power. Neji yelled, Running forwards once again, he thrust another palm at Naruto, which he caught around the wrist. Neji looked up at his foe to find glowing yellow eyes which had no place being on a human staring back at him in hatred. Naruto tightened his grip on his wrist, making Neji cry out in pain and a sickening crunch to be heard. You think, just because you are from a clan, you are better than me? You're just as bad as the Uchiha. Don't you dare compare me to that scum. Neji shouted before breaking free of Naruto's grasp and spinning round in one place, a dome of blue chakra forming around him which forced Naruto backwards. Oh, so you have a few more tricks up your sleeve. You may just make this interesting yet. Don't underestimate me, Uzumaki. Oh, maybe you hadn't heard my secrets already out. Most of the people in the village already know, thanks to one white-haired, pervy idiot. Near the hot springs. Achoo. Damn it, why are people talking about me at a time like this? Jiraiya said, fake tears running down his face as he was mercilessly pummeled by several irate and half-naked women. Anyway, my true name is Naruto Uzumaki Estacado. Namikaze. Neji's pale eyes widened as he finally noticed the resemblance between his opponent and the beloved Yondaime. A few villagers had not heard Jiraiya's outburst and were shocked by Naruto's revelation. Many, however, simply turned their heads in shame at the fact that they had treated their hero's son so badly. Those on the council reacted far differently. They had not heard in their reinforced council chamber, and were outraged at what Naruto had said. Everyone simply ignored them, and continued watching the match. Don't act like you're better than me, Neji, because you are sorely mistaken. I don't need my father's name to be better than you. I need no name, I simply am, and I swear, if you go spouting off some crap about fate and destiny, I'm shoving my foot so far up your ass you'll be picking shoelaces out of your teeth for weeks, Naruto said, and dark grin present on his face. Neji, to say the least, was scared shitless at that moment. He tried to run at Naruto again but failed, being tripped up by a demon arm and thrown into the air. Naruto followed him and grabbed his back, wrapping his tentacles around him similar to Lee's Omid Renge. Naruto started spinning, taking Neji with him. They rocketed towards the ground, Naruto screaming out his new attack's name. Kuro Renge. They crashed into the ground, making a large crater appear in the floor of the arena. A black blur sped away from the crater, landing on the wall of the arena and revealing itself as Naruto. He looked back at the damage caused by the imitated attack, squinting as he looked for the body of his opponent. He didn't have to look very hard, as Neji ran out of the crater, covered in cuts, bruises and other injuries. Naruto was too surprised at his ability to move to block his attack, and ended up taking the full force of Neji's move. You are within my field of divination. Hake. Rokujuiensho, he shouted, as his palms sped forwards, striking Naruto with all the speed and ferocity of a snake. 2 strikes. 4 strikes. 8 strikes. 16 strikes. 32 strikes. 64 strikes. Neji shouted, each set of attacks taking the same amount of time as the last. Naruto's body was hurled back with the last attack, colliding with the wall. Neji fell to his knees, panting and coughing from fatigue while Naruto stood back up, his injuries less serious than Neji's. You did well, Hyuga. You have earned my respect. The rest of your clan, however, has a long way to go. Since we have to finish this, and you're not the kind of person to give up so easily, I will give you the honor of losing to my new attack. Now Kurai Kiki, Naruto said, aiming an outstretched palm at Neji's fallen form. A ball of shadows gathering within. Naruto tensed his hand, and the ball exploded outwards, sending a beam of black energy at Neji, blasting him into the opposite wall. The audience stared, dumbfounded, at the power displayed by the blonde genin. Only Genma spoke, reappearing in the center of the arena. Winner, Uzumaki Estacado Namikaze. Naruto, he said as a group of medics peeled Neji off of the wall. Naruto left the arena, walking back up to the stands where he was knocked to his feet by a green and blue blur crashing into his chest. The blur stopped moving, showing Naru straddling Naruto's waist. Well done, Naruto-kun. How about we go celebrate? Naru asked, before being unceremoniously pushed away by Naruto. Not now, seriously, you need to get hosed down or something, Naruto replied, before mentally kicking himself, knowing how she could use it against him. Oh, you'd love to see me all wet, wouldn't you, Naruto-kun? It's not that I wouldn't, just that I don't have time right now. Why don't you go annoy Haku? Take your mind off sex for a while. Ah, do I have to? Now, fine, Naru said before disappearing. I still don't get how she does that, Naruto thought, before standing up and brushing dirt off his clothes. He continued walking, heading to the balcony reserved for contestants, where he stood next to Shikamaru, who was leaning over the balcony. Having fun with your girlfriend over there? Shikamaru asked with a smirk. Naruto just looked at him, an annoyed expression on his face. How many times do I have to tell you, she's not my girlfriend. And every time you do she'll deny it and say she is either that or say she's your fiancé copyright, which do you prefer? I'll stick with girlfriend, and well done, you just admitted it, you are now going out with Naru Romano, good luck, you'll need it. You know what? I fucking hate you. Yeah, I know I'm too smart for my own good anyway, have fun with your new girlfriend, I gotta go fight. Are you actually gonna try? Don't count on it, Shikamaru said, walking off down the stairs to the arena. In the center of the arena his opponent, Tamari, stood with an arrogant smirk on her face and one hand on the large battle fan on her back. He walked up to her, his hands in his pockets and a bored expression on his face. Genma looked between the two and held up his hand. Second match, Nara Shikamaru vs Sabaku no Tamari. Hajime. As soon as Genma had left the arena, Shikamaru disappeared. Tamari looked around, searching for a concealed attack. She saw a glimpse of a ponytail in a bush and swung her fan, cutting the bushes to shreds, leaving nothing but debris behind. She looked around again, swinging her fan in every direction as she saw a glimpse of Shikamaru everywhere. Her eyes widened as she realized she could no longer move. Something forced her to turn around, where her eyes widened even further. Standing near the wall of the arena were 6 Shikamarus, one in color while the others were black with yellow eyes. Kageme no Jutsu, success? What's going on? How can there be 6 of you? This is the true Kage Bunshin. Clones made completely from shadow. Their shadow jutsus are stronger than mine, hence why I'm making them trap you. So, now what? You can't beat me with those tentacles, there's no shadow out here. That's where you're wrong, you're forgetting. My Kage Bunshin, Shikamaru said with a smirk as several tentacles erupted from the shadow Shikamarus. But, I'm not gonna use that to beat you, that would be troublesome. Using up chakra I may need in the rounds to come. Not only that, but it would be rude to so harshly defeat a woman. Sexist. So what are you going to do then? Simple, I'm going to make you knock yourself out, he said, gesturing to his clones. They nodded, and raised their hands above their head as if they were going to drop something on it. Tamari copied them, raising her hands along with her fan over her head. The clones twisted their wrists, as if hitting themselves, which Tamari imitated, hitting herself over the head with the fan and knocking her out. Good night, Desert Rose, Shikamaru said, dispelling his clones and walking out of the arena. Genma reappeared as medics took Tamari away. Winner Nara Shikamaru. Now, we shall have a short break before moving on to the last 2 rounds of the finals. Shikamaru walked back up to stand next to Naruto on the balcony, staring out onto the empty arena. I didn't have you pegged for a romantic, Shika. What do you mean? Hey, heightened senses, they're a gift. I heard what you said to Tamari, Naruto said, making Shikamaru blush slightly. You must have heard wrong. Whatever. A while later. Now that everything is ready, let's continue with the finals. Third match, Aburame Shino vs Sabaku no Kankuro. Genma said from the center of the arena. I forfeit the match. Move on to the next one, Kankuro called from the stands. Very well, Shino wins by default. Now, onto the 4th match, Sabaku no Gara vs. Genma started, but was interrupted by the arrival of Sasuke and Kakashi. Are we late? Kakashi asked, looking at the half-destroyed arena floor. No, you're just in time. 4th match, Sabaku no Gara vs. Uchiha Sasuke Hajime. Genma finished before disappearing along with Kakashi. Sasuke ran forwards, throwing a few kunai at his opponent which were blocked by a wall of sand. The sand then moved again, firing itself at Sasuke, flinging him into the wall. He jumped off the wall just as another pillar of sand crashed into the space he was in a moment before. Sasuke jumped forwards, activating his Sharingan as he tried to attack Gaara. The Suna Nin blocked once more with a wall of sand and tried to hit Sasuke with a set of sand spikes which he dodged, jumping higher into the air. The Avenger ran through hand seals before putting his fingers to his lips and breathing out a ball of fire, turning Gaara's sand to glass. Another pillar of sand crashed into his chest, sending him up into the air. Sasuke used his fireball to turn it to glass once more and propelled himself off of it. Landing at the top of the wall, he ran through more hand seals before holding his right arm in front of him, his left hand gripping his right forearm. Lightning formed in the palm of his hand, branching out into the air as Sasuke called out his new attack. Chidori. Sasuke ran down the wall at breakneck speed, his electrified hand scraping the ground and making dirt and rocks fly through the air. Just before he crashed into Gaara's sand dome, he thrust his hand forwards, piercing the so-called absolute defense. A smirk appeared on his face as he felt something warm trickling onto his arm. He tried to pull his arm out, but found that he couldn't. His arm was trapped halfway through the dome. Eventually he pulled it out and jumped away, his arm covered in blood. He looked through the hole in the dome to find an eye staring back at him. It was yellow, with a black four-pointed star and 4 black dots in it. The eye screamed of bloodlust, and Sasuke was frozen in its stare. Most of the audience was wondering what was going on, not being able to see into the dome, but their thoughts were interrupted by the appearance of a rain of white feathers floating down from the sky. Seeing the white feathers, most of the villagers stated to feel drowsy, all but the shinobi, who noticed that it was a genjutsu and proceeded to release its sand and sound ninja burst from nowhere to fight the leaf ninja, while a large 3-headed snake appeared outside the village walls and began to destroy the village. The invasion of Konohagakure had begun. Sasuke, engage Gaara, led him away from the village. Naruto, help me take care of these ninja here. Sakura, go regroup the other leaf squads and tell them to report to me. We can't let them take over. Kakashi shouted over the roar of battle. Sasuke nodded, and sped off through a hole in the arena wall. Sakura ran off to find the others, while Naruto just stood there. Kakashi, may I make a suggestion? This isn't the time, Naruto. I'm just saying, wouldn't it be a better idea if I were to take care of Gaara? I have the best chance of winning against him, plus being a Jinchuriki myself. I know what he's going through. Just give the order, and I'll have this village saved. Whatever, just go. Kakashi yelled, while Naruto grinned and vanished. He reappeared on a tree branch deep in the forest, watching a battle between Sasuke and Gaara. His grin faded, a frown replacing it as he saw how pitiful the Uchiha's attacks were compared to the ferocity of Gaara's. He looked behind him to find Shino facing off against the puppet user, Kankuro, while his sister was crouched in a corner. Hiding from Gaara's terrible power, he jumped over to her, noticing that she was shaking with fear. She jumped as Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder, before looking up into his dark blue eyes. You should get out of here. Wouldn't want you getting hurt when I defeat your brother. Why, you can't possibly hope to defeat him. He has the power of a demon. He does he? That just makes it more interesting. Are you suicidal? He's gonna rip you to shreds? True, he probably would if he could. You see, he's not the only one with the power of a demon, Naruto said, a red aura forming around his body. Temari's eyes widened as he jumped towards Gaara, leaving cracks running through the branch she was sitting on. The next thing she saw was a hole being punched in the armor Gaara had fashioned for himself out of sand. Another hole joined it, and soon the entire armor was riddled with fist-sized punctures. Eventually the hole stopped appearing, and Naruto reappeared on a branch above Gaara, a dark grin on his face as he bared his elongated canines. Gaara looked up at him, a murderous gleam in his eye as he growled in anger at Naruto's cocky demeanor. What's the matter, Sandman? Tanuki got your tongue? Uzumaki, you're the one mother screams for. Not that don't like being in demand, I just don't feel like being tied down now. Why don't we just end this? I understand what you're going through. You know nothing of my pain, just lie down and die. I know nothing. You have me all wrong. Let me guess, your entire village fears you, despises you, hates you for something you can't control. They lash out with numerous attempts on your life. There are some who would turn you into a weapon, am I right? What this changes nothing. You still don't know what it's like. Give me your blood. Gaara roared, sending out columns of sand as he clutched at his head in pain. TCH, looks like I'm not getting through that sand-clogged head of his. Well, I guess peaceful negotiations are over. It's time for action. Naruto shouted, his eyes turning yellow as he unleashed the darkness. Instead of attacking, however, he ran through hand seals and slammed his hand down on the branch, sending a cloud of smoke rising into the air. From the cloud burst a number of gray beasts, holding knives, crowbars, bats, and anything they could get their hands on, each charging at the Tanuki-possessed genin. Kyobo na Hito, attack! The gray creatures jumped on Gaara, clawing at the skin that wasn't covered by sand. After a few seconds, a primal roar was heard throughout the forest along with several poofs as the berserkers were thrown into trees. Then silence, then a dark chuckle, followed by maniacal laughter and a loud roar and several crashes. I'm finally free! The now dominant Shukaku roared, his giant form filled out with the sand from Gaara's half-transformation. Oh, fuckberries! Top of the Hokage box, Sarutobi glared at the man before him, his brown eyes narrowing as he took in his pale skin and yellow eyes. Won't it be humiliating to be defeated by the one who once called you sensei? Orochimaru said, a sick smile on his paler than healthy face. I should have killed you when I had the chance. Now you won't get the chance at all since I'm fighting my sensei. I thought you might like to fight yours. The Shodem and Naidame Hokages, Orochimaru said, running through hand seals before slamming both hands onto the ground. Kachiyose. Edo Tensai. Two coffins began to rise from the ground, one with the kanji for first on the front, the other bearing the kanji for second. A third coffin began to rise, but was quickly stopped by a fireball, courtesy of Sarutobi. Phew, if I had had to fight all three, I would have been done for. The fronts of the coffins burst open, revealing Senju Hashirama, the Shodem, and his younger brother Tobarama, the Nidame. You demon. They look exactly as I remember. But you're wrong, these aren't my teachers, no matter how much they may look like them, they're simply your puppets. Is that what you'll tell yourself as you fight them? Orochimaru said, still smiling before gesturing to the Hokages. They ran forward before stopping halfway between Orochimaru and his old sensei. Tobarama ran through hand seals before a column of water rose around him, several jets of water bursting from it and flying towards Sarutobi. The Sandame slammed his hands into the ground, a wall of rock rising from the ground with him on top, protecting him from the water-based jutsu. The resurrected Hokages ran forwards again, Hashirama stopping this time to use his own hand seals, branches and roots bursting from the tiled roof of the building and the steep side of the Doryuheki. Tobarama began to run up the branches as Sarutobi ran down them, jumping out into the newly made forest. He landed on a thick branch and performed his summoning jutsu, calling out the Monkey King, Enma. The summoner and the summoned looked at each other, exchanging no words yet having a full-blown conversation at the same time. The Monkey King nodded, before disappearing in a cloud of smoke, leaving a large bow staff in its place which Sarutobi grabbed, getting into a battle stance. His eyes widened when he saw a snake rise from the depths of Orochimaru's throat, bearing the Kusanagi no Tsurugi which the snake Sanin proceeded to grasp. The old Hokage jumped forwards, hoping to hit Orochimaru in the stomach with the end of his staff, but was blocked by the Kusanagi. He stopped jumping and spun the staff above his head. Most of the strikes were blocked by the snake summoner's sword, but a few got past his guard and smacked him in the face, sending him skidding back. Orochimaru looked up at the face of his elderly sensei, his slitted yellow eyes filled with hate. Why do you continue to resist? Trying to change the outcome of this battle is futile, old man, just fall down and die. No, I will not fail this village. I won't stop until I've at least done some damage to you, you bastard, Sarutobi yelled, jumping towards his former student once again. In what's left of the forest, how the fuck do I fight something that big? Have you forgotten already? What are you talking about, Kyubi? Idiot, you just signed the contract, how could you have forgotten? What? Oh, right, all contracts have a boss summon. Then let's see who the boss for the darkness contract is. Naruto thought, slamming his hand onto the ground once more. Kachiyose no Jutsu. A large cloud of smoke obscured his form, along with everyone else's forms, being that the cloud of smoke was as big as Shukaku. Everyone held their breath as they waited to see what would appear form the cloud. Their waiting was ended when an enormous Zanbato pierced the smoke. It had several large curved blades running down the side, with what seemed to be black roots in the center and making up the handle. The blade turned and cut sideways through the smoke, dissipating it and revealing one of the most horrifying sights the genin had ever seen. It seemed to be a gigantic black ghost, no legs to speak of, as it seemed to just rise out of the ground. Its gleaming purple eyes shone out of its dark blue head, the rest of its body being a black that absorbed all the light around it, leaving nothing but shadow. Its large claws tightened around the handle of its sword while two purple, rune-like wings hovered ominously behind it. Naruto found himself on the creature's shoulder, looking out onto the battlefield. You must be Uzumaki Estacado Naruto, the new summoner. Greetings, I am the boss summoned for the darkness contract. Entropius, for what purpose have you summoned me? I have summoned you to aid me in protecting Konohagakure no Sato and its inhabitants. Will you lend your sword? I will. But know this, in 3 years' time, my reapers will come for you, to take your soul to the otherworld for eternity. If you defeat them, not only will you live, you will gain immense power, and I and my subordinates will bow to you, as will all those who carry darkness within them. That is the only condition for summoning me. I will take and uphold my end of the bargain now, let's rock. Indeed. Entropius flew towards the one-tailed sand demon, swinging his massive sword as he went. The sand demon tried to block, bringing up his blue-veined arm to protect itself, but to no avail. The curved blade sliced right through the sandy appendage, letting it fall to the forest below. Entropius swung again, but found that the arm had reformed itself from the leftover sand, and continued to block his attacks. While the left arm blocked, Shukaku swung its right arm at Entropius's head, which was stopped by a black hole which proceeded to absorb the arm until Shukaku managed to pull it away, leaving nothing but a sandy stump. The arm reformed, but not fast enough. Entropius shoved his blade through Shukaku's stomach and cut to the right, leaving a large empty space in his side which quickly reformed just like the rest of the body. Entropius's glowing eyes narrowed and he floated backwards, away from Shukaku. There must be a way to stop him from reforming. Naruto, can you tell me a little more about the enemy? I'll try. It's Shukaku, the one-tailed Biju. Its Jinchuriki is Gaara no Sabaku. Jinchuriki. Then Shukaku must have taken control somehow. Can you think of any distinguishing features that might give away how Shukaku is controlling him? Well, only that Gaara had huge bags under his eyes. It looked like he was wearing makeup. An insomniac, eh? Then that must be the Jinchuriki on top of Shukaku's head. Asleep. If we wake him up, Shukaku's control should end. Get us in close and try to keep Shukaku occupied. I'll take care of Gaara. Naruto yelled, while Entropius nodded, flying towards Shukaku once more. Instead of trying to cut the sand demon, the summon pierced his chest with the strange blade, holding him in place. Naruto ran down Entropius's arm and onto Shukaku's shoulder, dodging all manner of spikes, sand bullets and blasts of wind on his way to Gaara's resting place. Shukaku's last line of defense were a set of tentacles sprouting from the top of his head, grabbing onto Naruto's wrists and ankles and keeping him from waking Gaara. This didn't work, however, as Naruto used 2 demon arms to cut him free and reduce the tentacles to nothing more than grains of sand. Smirking at the pathetic attempt the demon had made at stopping him, Naruto turned to Gaara's unconscious form and kicked him a square in the forehead, not too hard, but hard enough to wake him up. Gaara's eyes opened wide as his head flew backwards, a loud rumbling and crashing sound coming from all around him. With the Ichibi's control relinquished, the demon's body was falling apart into the sand. It was comprised of both Naruto and Gaara fell to the ground. A few feet apart from each other, Naruto stood up and walked over to Gaara. Holding out a hand to help him up, Gaara simply looked at him with wide eyes. How could I have lost? What makes you so strong? Gaara said, staring at Naruto and the giant cloud behind him as Entropius disappeared. I'm not sure I can answer that question. It's kind of a toughie anyway. On an irrelevant note, you seem kinda strong and cool. Wanna be friends? Friends? Yeah, friends, you know, the opposite of enemies? Yes, sure. Something wrong? You don't hate me? I destroyed half your village? So, if you hadn't I would have. Plus, you hurt the Uchiha. Anyone who does that is okay in my books. Back with Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sarutobi was, to put it bluntly, fucked. He was standing in front of his former student while holding onto his shoulders. Not only that, but said student's sword was currently impaled through his chest. Enma was behind him trying to stop the sword going in any further. On top of all that, the Shinigami was floating behind him with his hand through his chest and was halfway through pulling out Orochimaru's soul in exchange for taking said soul. The death god would be taking Sarutobi's soul as well. Not a good situation by any standards. Gimme your soul, Sarutobi shouted, a moment of insanity breaking through under his current state of desperation. No, Orochimaru shouted back, trying to release himself from Sarutobi's grip. I said gimme. Sarutobi shouted again. The Shinigami watched this argument with unbridled enthusiasm. Red. Unfathomable boredom. Yet eventually got bored with it all and removed the bandaged dagger from his mouth, raising it high above his head. The death god swung his dagger, cutting off the soul as close to Orochimaru as he could so as to preserve as much intact soul as possible. Orochimaru's arms fell limp at his sides as he screamed in pain. Shinigami removed his arm, taking Sarutobi's soul with him as he disappeared from the plane of existence. The former Hokage fell to his knees as the life left him, his student still screeching in agony. Release the barrier. Take me back, he yelled to the 4 ninja upholding the purple barrier around the battlefield. The barrier fell. A large nin with orange hair lifting Orochimaru's wounded body and retreating from the village along with the others. The sound ninja were either killed, taken prisoner or managed to retreat. The outcome for the Suna nin was pretty much the same, only less prisoners. Konoha had beaten back its invading foes and struck a mighty blow to the traitorous Habi-sanin, but at what cost? We are gathered here to pay our last respects to the Sandaime Hokage and Professor, Sarutobi Hiruzen. A nameless Junin started, but his words fell on deaf ears when it came to one blonde member of the crowd gathered for the Sandaime's funeral. He simply stared at the ground, as if it were incredibly interesting. He probably would have been crying if he had any tears left, the only remaining evidence of having any being the puddles of water collecting in his room. Neru, standing beside him, looked at his emotionless face and grabbed his hand, linking her fingers with his in a fruitless attempt to make him react to something. Naruto just stood there, staring at a solitary blade of grass poking out of the dirt before either of the two genin realized. The funeral ended. all of the gathered ninja leaving to perform various duties around the village. Naru tried to get the Jinchuriki to move, but it was as if he was rooted to the ground. Neither of them noticed Kakashi appearing in a cloud of smoke until he was literally right behind them. "Hey, lovebirds, we have a mission. Let's get going," Kakashi said, looking at Naruto's frozen form. "What's the point?" Naruto muttered, making Kakashi raise an eyebrow. What do you mean? What's the point of being a ninja? Peace can never be attained. People will still die. Humans will still carry hate and envy in their hearts. Darkness will still have control over us, and the existence of ninja isn't helping. Peace is even more unattainable when ninjas exist," Naruto replied, making a certain pervert hiding in a tree raise an eyebrow. Nagato. "Well, that doesn't matter now, Naruto, unless you want to go and resign your ninja career. You have no choice in the matter." "Maybe I should," Naruto muttered under his breath, not even Naru able to hear him. He sighed and turned to face Kakashi. "What's the mission?" "A bandit camp has been abducting women from a nearby town. Our job is to infiltrate the camp and set the stage for a squad of Chunin and Junin to destroy the camp." "We're not allowed to take out the camp ourselves?" "Oh, we're allowed, but it'd be best to wait for backup." "Cancel the backup, I want to have some fun." A few hours later, bandit camp. "We're here, sensei?" Sakura asked. Looking at Kakashi's deep frown, she looked in the direction of his view and found Naruto, literally shaking with unbridled rage. "Sakura, get away from there now. I suggest we do hold on that backup, and just send in Naruto. It might be safer." Finally, Naruto whispered. Before disappearing, he reappeared in the center of the camp, walking slowly towards a crowd of bandits. "Hey, kid, you look lost. Looking for something?" one of the bandits asked, walking up to him, but backed away when he saw his glowing yellow eyes. A cloud of Kuriru appeared, circling Naruto's enraged body. He raised a hand and flexed his fingers, several demon arms traveling towards the crowd faster than most could run. A couple of bandits were impaled by the flying appendages, trapped on the spike. A couple more were cut clean in half by another tentacle. A couple of bandits ran at Naruto, weapons at the ready. He simply grabbed their weapons, their blades cutting into his palm and making dark crimson liquid flow down them. Naruto twisted his wrists and pulled the swords out of the bandits' hands, sending them tumbling to the floor, where the darkness wielder nailed them down with their own swords. He continued walking forward, ripping people apart left, right, and center. Anyone looking upon this camp would probably throw up just from the sight. Blood, intestines, organs, brain fluid, and various gray matter splattered over the walls. They would see a 14-year-old boy ripping the hearts out of terrified bandits, their warm blood splashing onto his pale skin and dropping them to the floor. Mutilated corpses strewn over the ground, their blood collecting in small holes in the ground, their innards spilling out for all to see, no flies surrounding their bodies. Eventually, Kakashi got tired of waiting for Naruto to reappear, and took Sasuke, Sakura, and Naru into the bandit camp. They walked through the giant wooden gate and were horrified by what they saw. Naruto had remodeled the place. A large ditch had been dug on one side and filled with the bodies of the dead, making a river of red. Windows were shattered. Heads were impaled on spikes lining the walls. The four ninja heard a loud slicing sound and were treated to the sight of Naruto power sliding along the ground, holding his sword like a guitar while a headless body fell behind him. Decapitation. Naruto, what happened here? I did. Of course, all of the bandits are dead. The women are in that building, he said, pointing towards a building that looked out of place, being that it was in no way destroyed. You go ahead back to the village. I'm gonna finish cleaning up. Kakashi nodded and turned to leave. Sasuke and Sakura followed him, but Naru stayed behind, looking into Naruto's near black eyes. Naruto-kun, Shikamaru told me something. Oh shit, did he now? Yeah, he said you actually did want to go out with me. Yeah, about that. Good luck, kid. Darkness? Where the hell were you? Sleeping. Fair enough. So you want to go out with me? Naru said with an excited squeal. While Naruto just hung his head in resignation, he looked up at her, and saw that she was genuinely happy about it, and, being the gentleman that he is, Naruto didn't want to deny her of her happiness. He simply sighed and looked into her own dark eyes. Fine, I'll go out with you, he said, before being knocked off of his feet by his new girlfriend. 1 week later, Uzumaki Namikaze Estacado. Naruto was irritated. Not the kind of irritated you experience when you stub a toe, or when a sibling is bugging you. No, this is the kind of irritation you get when your new girlfriend goes round telling the entire village the news. Then they drag you around said village by your wrist, using their freakish strength, to do whatever they want. At that moment he was sitting on a bench outside a row of ninja stores while Naru sped between them, picking up supplies, weapons, ninja gear and various other items you probably wouldn't see most Konoha and Kunoichi buying except for possibly Tenten. He could almost feel the Ryu disappearing from the wallet in his pocket finally. The blur that made up Neru's speeding form stopped moving, and Naruto found himself buried under a mass of bags, boxes and containers of all kinds. "Get thif ftuff off of me," his muffled voice said from under the pile. Neru decided to just jump into the pile, wrapping her arms around Naruto's disembodied waist. "I mean it, help me out of here." Neru rolled her eyes and threw a couple of boxes to the side, revealing Naruto's even more irritated face. "Do you really need this much stuff?" "Nope. Then why did you buy it? You don't know how girls work, do you?" "Not a clue," Naruto said, before spinning around and firing a shot from Pestilence into a nearby tree. An evil smirk grew on his face as he heard a pained shout and a large mass of white falling from a branch hanging over the hot springs. Climbing out of the shopping pile, he jumped over to the fence bordering the hot springs just as he heard several screams and the sound of a harsh beating. Looking at the altercation, Naruto found several towel-clad women surrounding the old man he had trained with over the month training period. He grinned. Seeing the many injuries the old sage was sporting from his perverseness, he walked over to the white hairball on the floor and kicked it, earning a groan. "Hey, Ero Sennin, get up, you old pervert." "Wa Naruto? Just the person I was looking for. We have a mission?" "Right now?" "Yes, right now." "Perfect, so what are we doing?" "We have to find my old teammate, Tsunade, so she can be the Godem Hokage." "'Kay then, let me get my stuff ready and I'll meet you at the gate," Naruto said. Disappearing a cloud of smoke, Jiraiya stood up and started hobbling towards the village gate. A few minutes later, "You ready to go?" Jiraiya asked, seeing his blonde student approaching the gate. "Yeah, I'm ready, so I know where we're going, but in return for my services I require payment. I'll train you in the ways of your father's jutsu, the Rasengan." "Deal, let's move," Naruto said, walking straight through the gate as fast as he could. He was stopped, however, by a sickeningly sweet voice from behind him. "Oh Naruto-kun, you wouldn't be about to leave without saying goodbye to me, would you?" "Oh of course not, Naru-chan," Naruto said, sweating heavily as he turned around. Once he was once again facing the village, he saw his girlfriend staring back at him with an evil smile. He walked forwards, as Neru simply stood there, hands on her hips. He stood in front of her, scratching the back of his head as he continued to sweat. He closed his eyes, waiting to feel some kind of incredibly painful torture. He was confused then, as you can imagine, when he felt something soft touch his mouth. He opened his eyes to see if she was putting a snake in his mouth or something, but he found Neru standing there with her lips on his. He just stood there, frozen, as he knew not what to do. Eventually, Neru pulled back and grinned at him. "Have a nice trip, Naruto-kun," she said. Running back into the village, Naruto just stood still for a few seconds, before turning around and continuing to walk away from the village, while Jiraiya stood a few feet away with a smile on his face. "So, the kid freezes up even when he gets kissed? Oh, we'll have to change that. I will model this kid in my perverted image." As the two nin walked, Jiraiya formulated a plan for perversifying, if that's a word, his blonde student, which included several hot springs, clothes stores and, of course, gentlemen's establishments. "Ero Sennin, if you're trying to perversify me, it won't work, so stop now," Naruto said with an eye twitching, as tears cascaded down Jiraiya's face. "So, where are we headed?" "First, we go to a small settlement near here. I have an informant who may have knowledge of Tsunade's whereabouts." "It's strange, how you go from pervy and weird all serious in half a second," Naruto finished, a sweat drop forming on his forehead. "This is just one of the many things I will teach you, my young Padawan." "Wrong show." A few hours later, "We're here," Jiraiya exclaimed, looking around the town. "We would have made it here a lot quicker if you hadn't felt the need to stop at every hot spring resort along the way. There is a limit to how pervy a man can be without seeming creepy and desperate. Whatever, why don't you go get us a hotel room, while I try to find our informant?" "Would our informant be a woman, perhaps? What would give you that idea?" "Oh, just a wild guess," Naruto said, walking towards the nearest hotel. He entered said hotel, and turned to the sleeping owner. He rang the small bell on the desk, but nothing happened. After a few more rings, Naruto was beginning to get a little annoyed. Leaning down to put his mouth near the sleeping man's ear, Naruto grinned. "Hey asshole, wake up," he shouted, the old man jumping straight into the air and landing back in his seat. "Yes sir, how can I help you?" he said, as if nothing happened. "I'd like a room, please." "Very well," the man said, reaching behind the desk for a small silver key. "You'll be in room 218. Oh, can pay when you leave. Have a pleasant stay." "I'm sure I will," Naruto said before walking away. As he headed towards the stairs, he noticed out of the corner of his eye the man laying his head back down on the desk and returning to his slumber. Lazy bastard. A few moments later, Naruto was inside his hotel room, and crossing his fingers in his signature hand seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A cloud of smoke enveloped the room, quickly disappearing to reveal 10 clones standing in front of the original. Okay. Meanwhile Arrow Sennin is gone. We're gonna be training chakra control exercises. The lot of you grab a leaf and get levitating, Naruto said. Each of the clones grabbing a leaf from an overhanging branch outside the window. One of the clones noticed something strange outside, and called the original over to take a look. Two weirdos in black cloaks with red clouds on them. One's really tall with blue skin and a massive sword. The other's average, and looks a little like oh, fuck me sideways. What the hell? Itachi Uchiha, here, not good, not good, not good. Either the town's gonna get killed, or Sasuke's gonna show up. And I'm not sure which is worse. Need to find Arrow Sennin now. Naruto thought, but his frantic mentality was interrupted by a knock at his door. He walked up to it and looked through the small hole, seeing the familiar cloud-adorned cloaks and hats of the two missing nin. Okay, I know ninja are supposed to be fast, but this is ridiculous. The blonde-haired shinobi reached slowly for the doorknob, at the same time reaching for the gun placed on a table beside the door. In one fluid movement, he opened the door, took aim and fired a pestilence blast at the face of the traitorous Uchiha. Somehow, the nuke nin saw the shot coming and managed to move out of the way and back, the blast creating a small crater in the wall behind him. As Itachi moved back into his former position at the doorframe, Naruto noticed how calm he looked, as if nothing that had happened had fazed him whatsoever. Naruto moved the barrel of his gun back into the face of the ex-Konoha nin, squeezing the trigger in an intimidating fashion. Good to see you, Naruto-kun. I'd say the same, Itachi-nisan, but I'm afraid I don't like lying. Why such hatred? I thought you'd be glad to see me, kid. I would have been, had you not gone rogue and left me alone again. I'm sorry, kid, but I did what I had to do. Now, we need you to come with us. And what makes you think I'll listen? Naruto said, reaching back into his hip pouch for a kunai. If I were you, Naruto-kun, I wouldn't try to attack me. I taught you everything you know. Not everything, the young Jinchuriki said, closing his eyes as a powerful red aura surrounded him. This had almost no effect on the two missing nin, only causing the large blue one to grin and reach back for his bandaged sword, which he swung at Naruto. The red aura seemed to disappear, and the earth shaking that had accompanied it ceased. Naruto's eyes narrowed, then he closed them again. Instead of a red aura appearing, however, this time it was a yellow one. The large shinobi grinned again and swung his sword at the genin once more, but this time nothing happened. The yellow aura continued to grow, encompassing Naruto's body as it pressed down upon Itachi and his partner. Naruto opened his eyes, revealing pupil-less yellow eyes which bore holes in Itachi's. He raised a hand, shadows gathering in his palm in the same manner as they did in the match against Neji. Naruto smirked, his lips moving to reveal sharpened canines similar to that of a dog or other canine. His hand tensed, the ball of shadows exploding, instead of firing itself as a beam. All three shinobi were thrown backwards, the two nuke nin managing to keep their footing while Naruto was thrown directly through his hotel room's opposite wall. Itachi moved back to the doorway. Looking through into the hotel room, his eyes widened as a black and yellow blur sped through the hole in the wall and directly into Itachi. It stopped moving for a split second, revealing Naruto with his fist buried deep in Itachi's stomach. Guess what, motherfucker, Falcon Punch? Naruto yelled as an explosion occurred at the point of impact, causing the appearance of an Itachi-shaped hole in the corridor wall. Naruto dropped to his hands and knees, panting as the other shinobi pulled the sword from his back. Ah yes, the fight the enemy one at a time rule. Back in the Leaf Village, at the gate, did you hear? Azumo asked his friend and teammate, Katetsu, as they worked their perpetual gate duty. No, what? They say Uchiha Itachi has been spotted near here. He's been asking for a blonde kid with whiskers. You mean Naruto? Man, that kid cleaned me out when we played poker once. You idiot. Anyway, is anyone doing anything about Itachi? Not until he comes near the village. No, it's become a big-time secret, though, and it's especially secret when it comes to Sasuke, Azumo told him, just as the aforementioned Avenger walked through the gate, covered in cuts, scrapes and dirt from another of Kakashi's training sessions. He heard what the Chunin had been talking about, his eyes wide as thoughts rushed through his head. Itachi is here. And he's after Naruto. Why not me? Damn it, I'm gonna find him. I need to settle the score once and for all, he thought, before rushing back out of the gate. not noticing the spandex-clad Junin watching him. So, Sasuke has gone after Itachi, eh? And plans on confronting and defeating him? His flames of youth are truly bright. But just to be sure, stalker of youth no jutsu, the hidden shinobi thought, before disappearing into the leaves. Back with Naruto. Naruto was on his hands and knees once again, his sword on the ground before him while his fish-like opponent standing in front of him with a smirk, his sword half unwrapped revealing blue razor-like scales covering the surface of the blade. Damn, need to find a way to get out of here. Plus, I think Itachi'll be up soon, which makes my chances of escape even slimmer. Come on, Ero Sennin, hurry up and stop being a perv. Naruto thought, dodging another swing by rolling to the side. However, instead of hearing the infamous introduction theme of the great and powerful Gamma Sennin Jiraiya, his ears were treated to the sound of birds. He glanced through the doorway, seeing the entire corridor bathed in a blue light emanating from a doorway at the end of the hall. The next thing he saw was Itachi appear in the middle of the corridor and grab a lightning-covered hand, and a loud crack sounded. He saw Sasuke being thrown into a wall and held there by a hand at his throat. While being forced to gaze into Itachi's misshapen Sharingan, Naruto tried to push past the blue shinobi to help Sasuke, but was stopped by the appearance of the blue sword in his stomach. Don't tell me this is all the power your hatred for me has granted? Keep going like this, Sasuke, and you'll never avenge the clan? Shut up, come on. Oh Tuto, if this is all the power you possess, no wonder you charged me like that. Even if you had the power, you wouldn't have the skill to use it. I said shut up. Very well, just 4 more words. Look into my eyes, Itachi said, activating one part of his Mangekyo Sharingan. Tsukuyomi. Wa. Was all Sasuke could say before he fell unconscious. Naruto saw Sasuke fall to the floor as Itachi let go of him, and his older brother turned back to his target. Naruto swung his sword at the fishman, which was blocked by his own sword. Naruto took this opportunity to fire a pestilence blast into his foe's head, knocking him through yet another wall. He ran past his opponent and attempted to pass Itachi and help Sasuke, but was grabbed by the collar by the traitorous Uchiha. Now, Naruto-kun, you'll be coming with us, Itachi said, turning towards the exit, but what they found was not expected. The infamous plucking noise that made up Jiraiya's introduction theme, the Gamma Sennin himself, carrying an unconscious woman over his shoulder, with a grin on his face. Nay, Itachi-san, you wouldn't be trying to steal away my student from me, would you? He was my student first. How childish anyway. I'm afraid I can't let you take him. I made a promise, plus, we're kinda busy. You think I care? Probably not, but even you know that you're not strong enough to defeat one of the Sannin. I guess so, Kisame. We will take care of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki at a later date, Itachi said to his partner, before running towards the exit. You don't think I'd let you go, do you? Jiraiya said as the walls became pink and mushy, like the insides of some strange creature. You cannot escape the stomach of the mountain toad, Jiraiya said, before the 2 nuke nin disappeared, the only sign that they moved being the breeze that passed him, heading towards the exit. An explosion was heard from the end of the hall, and both he and Naruto turned to see a large hole in the end of the hall showing the rest of the village. Black flames ran around the edges of the hole, seemingly burning on nothing. Jiraiya frowned seeing them, and walked forwards with a scroll in hand, sealing the ever-burning flames into it. Hey, Naruto, grab Sasuke and we'll get out of here, Jiraiya said, before being kicked in the head by a flying green blur yelling. Dynamic ENTRYYYYY. Guy-sensei. What are you doing here? I saw Sasuke, Itachi, the blue man and this old guy fighting, so I decided to help, Guy said, flashing his nice guy pose. Dude, you just kicked one of the Sannin in the head, Naruto told him, a sweat drop present on his brow. Wow, Jiraiya-sama. I did not know it was you. My youthfulness has been diminished by this unyouthful act. Just shut up, I now have a pounding headache. Just take the duck butt kid and leave now, Jiraiya said as he stumbled around, clutching his pounding head. A few hours later. Here we are, Gaki, the town of Tanzaku. This is where we'll find Tsunade, y'all. Yep, but first, we have to get some information. Yeah, quick question, when are you actually gonna train me? Oh, yeah, about that. If you don't train me now, I'm off. Fine, demanding brat. First, we need water balloons. Water balloons, check, Naruto said, pulling out a bag of water balloons. You carry water balloons around? You never know? Right then, let's get out to the forest, Jiraiya said, disappearing in a cloud of smoke, while his student did the same in the forest. Jiraiya held a balloon in his right hand. Okay then, this is what we're gonna achieve in this lesson, he said, as the water in the balloon moved around, pushing outwards as it tried to break the balloon. Eventually, the balloon burst, sending water spraying over Jiraiya. Now, what did you notice? The water was rotating, but not only in one direction. The multiple directions caused the water to move around wildly, destroying the balloon. Correct. Now, grab a balloon and get to work, Jiraiya told him, walking back towards the town. Naruto stared at the balloon as if it were going to explode just by his gaze. He gathered his chakra in the balloon, rotating the water as fast as he could in every direction he could manage. He noticed the balloon beginning to glow yellow, but continued the chakra flow, thinking nothing of it. In a few moments, he knew how wrong his judgment was. The balloon exploded, literally, sending Naruto through several trees and burning a few more to a crisp, leaving a large black mark on the forest floor. Cough, cough. I think I, cough. Did it? I should go tell Ero Sennin, Naruto said, before he fell on his back, slipping into sweet unconsciousness. Wake up, come on, kid, wake up, a small, high-pitched voice said from somewhere above Naruto. The blonde boy opened his eyes to find a small bat flying in circles around his head. Oh, you're finally awake, Dachu. I was beginning to think you were dead. What the a talking bat? Someone must have spiked my sake. You have sake? Never mind. What time is it? You're asking a bat the time? You're the only one here, and you might have a watch hidden in your wing. What's a watch? No idea. Where are those balloons? Naruto said to himself as he looked around the clearing made by the explosion. Guess I must have destroyed them all. Oh well, better go find Ero Sennin, he said, walking back in the direction of the town. As he neared the gate, he noticed that the bat was still following him. Hey, bat, what do you want? I have a name. I am the Great Ko-sama. Great Ko-chan, why are you still following me? I said, I am Ko-sama. Like I give a crap. Why are you following me? Because that's my mission. I have to follow you for my master. Who's your master? I can't tell you that. Right, well, if you're gonna follow me, just keep quiet. Ero Sennin. Ero Sennin. Naruto shouted, looking around the town for his perverted mentor. Where is he? Wait a minute. Typical, Naruto said, seeing a ball of white hair sitting outside a hot spring with a telescope. Hehe, the girls in this town are even better than Konoha's. Ero Sennin, I finished the first step sort of, Naruto said, walking up to the perverted old man. Now, what's the second step? Damn it, what do you mean, sort of, Jiraiya said, turning to his second blonde student. I mean, I can make the balloon pop, but it just happens to destroy the surrounding area as well. I've basically turned a water balloon into a hand grenade. How much chakra did you put in? Not much, but the balloon turned yellow and then it exploded. Being that it was yellow, and not red or blue, I think it has something to do with the darkness. Maybe, but if you can manage to control it long enough without having it explode, you could make this attack even more powerful than it was originally. Either way, I think that result has made the second step, power, redundant. You just need to be able to form the same chakra flow outside the balloon as you did inside, making a ball of explosive spiraling chakra in the palm of your hand. Is that all? This'll be a piece of cake, Naruto said, before he froze as a female voice spoke from behind him. You're actually teaching this brat the Rasengan? Why bother? He won't be able to learn it, no matter who he is. The voice said. Naruto turned around, coming face to face with a woman with blonde hair tied into two pigtails and a very sizable chest. Who asked you? Show some respect, brat. I am Tsunade Senju, one of the Sannin and descendant of the Shodem and Nidaime Hokages. The woman shouted, rearing back her fist to punch the boy before her. And I am Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze Estacado, son of the Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze and descendant of Anthony Estacado, the darkness wielder. He shot back, making the woman in front of him freeze and lower her arm. Jiraiya, is this true? She said, staring at the ground as if it were her worst enemy. The old man stood up and walked to his teammate. Yeah, this is Minato's son, Naruto. I was shocked too. Hell, I almost killed the council. Now can you see why I want to teach him the Rasengan? Why are you here, Jiraiya? I told you, I want nothing to do with Konoha. Sarutobi sensei was killed, Jiraiya said, making Tsunade's eyes widen. Otto and Suna invaded the village together. The Ichibi Jinchuriki fought against Naruto, with Naruto being the victor while that was going on. However, Orochimaru fought with Sarutobi sensei. Orochimaru, I should have known he'd be the one to do something like that. He came to me. Just the other day he asked me to fix his arms, and in return he would give me back Nawaki and Dan. He wouldn't tell me how his arms got injured. Sensei used the Shiki Fuin to seal Orochimaru's arms away. As long as his arms are injured, he can't cast any jutsu, at least until he changes bodies again. Which is why he wants Sasuke, Naruto added. Sasuke? Tsunade asked. turning to the blonde shinobi. Uchiha Orochimaru wants to take Sasuke's body because he's the last Uchiha besides Itachi who can use the Sharingan. With the Sharingan, Orochimaru will be able to copy any jutsu he wants, which makes one part of his goal complete. Naruto finished, his arms crossed over his chest. Right, the reason we've come, Tsunade, is to ask you to return to the village, and not only that, but to be its new Hokage, Jiraiya said, smiling at his teammate. Are you out of your mind? Huh? I think Naruto here could do a better job of this? The only reason I'd ever go back to Konoha was if someone I loved was in danger, and since the only person worthy of that is here, it ain't happening. What makes you think I'm just gonna go back to Konoha because you ask me? For as long as I can remember, I've been lied to, taken advantage of, shot in the back and left for dead now. You becoming Hokage will give me a way out of all this. What in the hell makes you think I'm going to ask for it? Naruto said with a glare as he opened his right palm. An unstable ball of yellow chakra began to form, and it looked as if it were about to blow. Now, Ko-chan. Hi, Dachu. The small bat said as he flew down from his perch on Naruto's shoulder and started to fly in circles around the ball of chakra. Flapping his wings furiously, the sphere began to stabilize, becoming clearer and more compact as it spun. When the sphere was perfect, Ko flew back to Naruto's shoulder as the blonde shinobi ran forward, thrusting the chakra-adorned hand towards the wide-eyed Tsunade. Why is it yellow? Is this the power of the darkness? Nice try, kid, but you'll have to do better than that if you want to beat Asanin. She shouted as she made to grab Naruto's wrist and cancel his chakra flow, but she noticed something strange about the sphere in his hand. It seemed to grow unstable to the point where it nearly exploded, then become compact again, spinning rapidly as it flew. As if some separate entity was stabilizing it for him. As he grew even closer, the sphere became, if possible, too stable. It glowed a bright yellow as if it were a star in the night sky, wisps of golden chakra flying off the sphere like shrapnel. She tried to stop it with her bare hand, pushing it back with her own chakra-reinforced fist, but it was in vain. The sphere exploded, sending yellow chakra, debris and people flying over the area, with a large crater where the impact occurred. Tsunade found herself lying in a wooden stall, her body covered in burns. She looked to the other side of the square and grimaced. At least I fared better than the kid. Naruto had flown through several walls, making a genin-sized hole through a house. Large, dangerous-looking cracks spread outwards from the hole like a spiderweb, threatening the structure of the building. She stood up from her place in the stall, and walked back to Jiraiya, his jaw on the ground. Close your mouth, you'll catch flies. Jiraiya closed his mouth so fast you could hear a sickening crack from his jaw. It's too bad about the kid. He was a worthy opponent, but this was his last battle. Do you think so? Do you think I can be beaten so easily? I can't lose now. I have too much to protect to die now. A voice growled from the hole, as wisps of red chakra could be seen floating slowly out of the cracks. Jiraiya frowned and disappeared. Reappearing in front of the demon-possessed shinobi with a piece of paper in hand, he slammed the paper into Naruto's forehead, revealing a seal drawn onto the paper. The red chakra surrounding him disappeared into Naruto's body as he fell to his knees. Exhausted, Jiraiya picked up his student and walked through the hole, seeing Tsunade with wide eyes again. Don't underestimate this kid. He'll go to the ends of the earth to protect his beliefs and that which is precious to him. Anyone he considers precious is incredibly lucky, because it's a surprise he can trust anyone with what he's been through, Jiraiya said, before disappearing, leaving Tsunade standing by herself. The next day. Where am I? Naruto asked as he opened his eyes, sunlight burning his eyes as it shone through the open window. He looked around the small room he found himself in, noticing the chair beside his bed and the small table. A knock sounded at the door, and Naruto activated the eyes of the darkness, his eyes turning yellow as he searched for a chakra signature. This was his routine ever since the incident with Itachi. He found Jiraiya's chakra on the other side, and told him to come in. Are you feeling better, Naruto? He asked, making Naruto look down at his body. He noticed that most of his body was covered in bandages, and his right arm was completed wrapped with especially thick bandages, signifying that it had taken the most damage. I think so. What happened? The Rasengan exploded, sending you through a couple of walls. Then you started to release the Kyuubi's chakra, making some of your wounds worse, especially those of your right arm. So what? I can't use my right arm anymore. No, nothing like that. It's just damaged, not destroyed. The burns you received were severe. If it were anyone else they would have lost the arm. Then the Kyuubi's chakra began to burn your body, your arm becoming completely covered in burns. You may not be able to take those bandages off, ever. If I have my arm wrapped for life, how'd I use jutsu? I modified those bandages myself. There are special seals on that cloth which improve chakra control, reduce pain, allow chakra molding and seal items. You mean my arm is basically a chakra-conducting, pain-reducing sealing scroll with expert chakra control? Essentially, yes. That's pretty badass. Yes, I suppose it is. So, where's Tsunade? She and her assistant, Shizune, went to meet with Orochimaru. What? She's going to help him. No, she's not. She's going to trick him when she has him right where she wants him. We'll jump out Tsunade and I will fight Orochimaru, while you and Shizune will take on his assistant, Kabuto. Yakushi Kabuto. You know him. Unfortunately I know how he fights, at least he uses chakra scalpels and various medical jutsu. In fact, he has a strange ability that allows him to heal himself instantly, like Tsunade's, but it doesn't shorten his life. How do you know about Tsunade's ability? That's for me to know and you to shut up about. In a nearby field. So, you decided to show up, Tsunadeheim? I've decided to help you, then you'll hold up your end of the bargain once everything is done. I'm leaving. Of course, I only asked you to heal me. I can't really request any more of you. Orochimaru said as he gestured with his head to Kabuto. The silver-haired shinobi nodded and removed the bandages from his master's arms. As Tsunade walked forwards, she knelt down and placed her hands on Orochimaru's arm and began to pump chakra into it. Kabuto watched as she did so, and his eyes narrowed before he threw a kunai at the legendary medic Nin, who jumped backwards to stand with Shizune. Kabuto, what do you think you're doing? Orochimaru shouted at his student. That chakra that was not healing chakra. That chakra was filled with the intent to harm. She was trying to kill you, Orochimaru-sama. Was she now? Good work, Kabuto. Now leave it to me. Take care of that girl for me, Orochimaru said, nodding towards Shizune. Tsunade-sama, I think we should leave now, Shizune said to her teacher. Not yet, not until Jiraiya and Naruto arrive. But how can you be so sure that Naruto will be well enough? And if he is, what makes you think either of them will be able to help? Because I believe in them, plus, I made a bet with Jiraiya. Oh, Kami, help us, we're all gonna die, Shizune thought as Orochimaru ran forward with a kunai in his mouth. His charge was halted, however, when a wooden sandal collided with the side of the snake Sanin's head. He flew to the other side of the field, his body digging into a large boulder as the owner of the sandal stood with a grin. Boot to the head, Oro-chan. Jiraiya, what a surprise. Stop talking, that hiss of yours is starting to annoy me. Very well, if it's a battle you want, then I shall grant it to you, Orochimaru said as Kabuto appeared next to him. Wiping a drop of blood on a tattoo on Orochimaru's arm, he slammed his arm into the ground, just as Tsunade and Jiraiya did the same, yelling out the same jutsu. Kachiyose no Jutsu. 3 clouds of smoke erupted from the place their hands rested, filling the sky with smoke. A strong breeze blew through the area, dissipating the cloud and revealing 3 giant animals: a purple snake with 4 horns on its head, a white slug with a blue stripe down its back, and an orange toad with a blue jacket, a pipe, a red bead necklace, and a scar over his eye. Each of the 3 Sannin stood on the head of their respective summon, glaring at their opponent. Tsunade-sama, will you be alright? Shizune thought aloud as she looked up at the giant slug. You should be worrying about yourself, not her, Kabuto said from behind her, making her spin around with 3 senbon drawn. And you should be worrying about yourself as well, Kabuto-san. Because very soon you won't be able to do anything, let alone worry. A voice said from a group of trees at the edge of the field near Kabuto and Shizune. They turned to the trees to see 2 pairs of glowing yellow eyes staring at them through the trees, one much smaller than the other. The eyes' owner stepped out from the shadows of the trees, revealing themselves to be Naruto and Ko, glaring at the sliver-haired Otto Nin. Shizune-san, step back, you're only going to get hurt if you continue. But no arguing, go on. Get out of here, your medical skills will most likely be needed when this fight is over, Naruto said as Ko left his shoulder. Flying into the air, Naruto vanished, leaving Kabuto to look around the area frantically for a possible attack. He appeared behind Kabuto, grabbing hold of him before saying 4 words that scared Kabuto shitless. Bakuretsu Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto exploded, covering the area in fire and earth. When the dust settled, Kabuto was nowhere in sight. Another Naruto walked out of the trees, apparently having hidden them while the clone did the dirty work. He scanned the field, but jumped to the side as he sensed a chakra signature to his right. He moved just in time to dodge Kabuto's chakra scalpel and grabbed his foe's wrist, flinging him round and into one of the trees, where he began to pummel him mercilessly into the bark. Cracks ran through the tree, getting wider with each punch before Naruto grabbed hold of Kabuto's shirt and threw him into the air, where several demon arms followed him. The tentacles pierced his skin, but he was engulfed in smoke as Kabuto transformed into a log. Naruto scowled and scanned the area again, looking for another chakra signature, A hand clad in thin blue chakra sprang out of the ground, tapping Naruto's leg. Naruto fell to his knees in pain. He grabbed the hand and pulled it from the ground, pulling Kabuto along with it. He threw Kabuto into the air and punched him in the stomach, forcing him into a boulder. Naruto applied chakra to one of the seals on his bandages, from which appeared a small piece of paper with the kanji for heal written on it. He placed it on his leg, where it disappeared in a flash of green light. He stood up, stretching his now healthy leg. Gotta thank Ero Sennin for those seals. He walked up to Kabuto, who was still stuck in the rock, and punched him in the stomach once more. Why do you help Orochimaru? The question is, why don't you? Because I, no matter what I look like, am not a traitorous bastard. And if you're so fixated on helping the snake, I'll be forced to kill you where you street. Are stuck? Naruto said as he gathered another ball of chakra in his palm. Once again, Ko flew down from his place in the skies as began flying around the sphere, stabilizing it. The sphere glowed yellow as Naruto thrust it forwards, but this time it did not explode. It began literally tearing through Kabuto's flesh like a saw, pieces of flesh and blood flying everywhere. It tore straight through Kabuto's torso, leaving 2 lifeless pieces of meat lying in a rock to decompose. Naruto closed his eyes as he cancelled his jutsu, Ko flying back to his shoulder. The power of a compacted explosion is a terrible and gruesome power. He turned back to face Shizune, who had been watching the battle with wide eyes. As Naruto turned, Shizune's expression of shock turned to one of absolute terror. He looked positively demonic. Body parts, pieces of flesh and blood spatters adorned the area, with Naruto being drenched in blood himself, so much so that his hair and skin had all but turned red. His creeping dark and demon arms moved to and fro on either side of him, and his eyes were filled with anger and hatred as they glowed an ominous yellow. He looked up to the Sannin's battle to find that Orochimaru had looked over to him with pure fury in his eyes as he saw the corpse of his student. He dismissed Manda and jumped away, shouting curses back at the 2 Sannin and the Jinchuriki. Ko. This episode's battle took 90 minutes to write. Dachu. Hey, Naruto, you okay? Jiraiya shouted as he was treated by Tsunade. Yeah, I only had to use 1 healing note this time, better than I had expected. Good. How's Shizune? She's fine, she didn't fight. And Kabuto? He's resting in pieces, in an underground compound somewhere in Rice Country. Damn Jiraiya and that fox brat. First Jiraiya stops my snakes from destroying the village, then he and the Gaki persuade Tsunade to betray me. And now the brat kills Kabuto, leaving me helpless. Orochimaru shouted as he writhed in pain, and Oto Kunoichi knelt beside him, changing the bandages on his useless arms. Sounds like you're having some trouble, Orochimaru. Someone said in a slightly sing-song voice from the doorway. He turned his head to find a girl with long blonde hair leaning against the doorframe. She wore a green shirt which revealed her midriff and was pulled taut over her chest. With tight red pants over her slender legs, she pushed off the wooden doorframe with her back and walked into the room. Standing before Orochimaru with her arms crossed, the girl glared at the snake Sannin in disgust, waiting for him to speak. Who asked you, brat? If I wanted your opinion I would have called you. Learn your place, you stupid girl. He shouted, accidentally flailing his arms about and hitting the Kunoichi in the head, sending her into the wall. The blonde girl's glare intensified and she grabbed the Sannin's neck. Squeezing slowly, the Serpentine Man made several noises before the girl released him, throwing his head back against the wall. Don't try and order me, or treat me like you do your followers. Worm, I could snap your spine like a twig. She said in a tone heavy with venom. Just get yourself healed already. I, unfortunately, need your help to get to the Darkness Wielder, as the Angelus has requested of me. And the Angelus will keep up its end of the bargain? The Angelus never goes back on its word. You would do well to remember that, Worm. Is your mistress so strong that she can defeat the one who killed Kabuto? I mean, he didn't even use the curse seal I gave him? She is one of the 2 entities that entered this world first. The only ones that could possibly defeat her are the darkness itself and their child. Child? I was under the impression the darkness and Angelus were mortal enemies? They are quite some time ago. The 2 entities formed a short-lived truce during this time of peace. They conceived a child. The Witchblade, as it was called, was to be the balance of these 2 powers. Sadly, neither side was able to coax the Witchblade to side with them. What if this Witchblade were to surface, or the boy happened to gain the full power of the darkness? He could not unless he had the wish to lose his very soul. In Konoha, Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura stood before Tsunade, who was now sitting behind the desk in the Hokage office. Kakashi, however, was nowhere in sight. Team 7, I have your latest mission. You are to go to T Country where you will be briefed on the rest of the mission details. Why can't you just give us the details now? Sasuke asked. Because that wouldn't be quite as fun, Tsunade said, the entirety of Team 7 sweat dropping. Fine. Can we just leave? Naruto asked, looking around the room. No, we have to find Naru, and what are you looking for? Sakura asked, raising an eyebrow. Nothing, just being paranoid anyway. Bachan, didn't you say about transferring Naru to a different squad? No, I don't remember saying anything about. Tsunade started, but was cut off by a death glare sent at her by a certain Jinchuriki. I suppose I could put her on a mission with Guy's team, but you have to tell her. Oh god, why? Fine, I'll go tell her, at least she won't be on the mission. Naruto, why don't you want to spend time with your girlfriend? Sakura asked, not knowing exactly what Naru was like. I expect he's sick of her by now, Sasuke chimed in. Not sick of her, no, in a way it's kinda cute, but it gets annoying pretty quickly. Naruto told his team, well, I'll see you guys at the gates, make sure to pack everything, Naruto said before vanishing as if he wasn't there to begin with. He appeared outside his apartment and unlocked the door. Noticing the banging sounds coming from within, he pulled a darkness gun from its holster and held it near his face. Ready to fire at a moment's notice, the firearm was quickly put away, however, when he saw the source of the noises. Naru, what are you doing here? Oh, just cleaning up, the girl said as she stood up from the cardboard box she had been halfway into. But it was tidy to begin with. I know, but I had to clean up after I finished moving my things in. What do you mean, moving your things in? We only just started going out. So, either way, I have nowhere else to go. You're not gonna throw me out onto the street, are ya? Naru asked as she walked up to Naruto, making use of the puppy dog eyes no jutsu. No, I guess not. Wait, what do you mean, nowhere else to go? Where were you living before? Well, I lived in an apartment by myself, seeing as I'm an orphan like you, and my tenant just threw me out. What? Why? Naruto asked, slightly confused as to why he was getting so worked up. He found out I was going out with you. Well, that was it. Naruto took out a small black book from his pocket and wrote something down in it, before smiling evilly and placing a hand on Naru's shoulder. Well, I guess you can stay here, just try not to sneak into my bed? I can't make any promises, so, why are you back here? I thought you had a mission? Oh, yeah, you're being sent on a mission with Guy's team. Oh come on, I just started going out with you, and I never get any time with you, she complained, making Naruto chuckle. So, when are you leaving? Now I just came back to pick up my pack and sword. Oh, well here ya go, she said happily as she passed Naruto his bag and blade. She then grabbed hold of his hand and began to lead him out of the door. Come on, Naruto-kun. I'm gonna see you off. Naruto was unable to protest as his girlfriend proceeded to drag him down the street with her inhuman strength. At the gates, Naru and Naruto arrived at the village gate, the latter being near unconscious. The dust cloud that had been building behind them as they rushed through the village surrounded, making both of them cough. Sasuke and Sakura rolled their eyes at the sight, while another set of eyes widened when they took in the couple's interlocked hands. Tears welled up in the eyes as their owner disappeared. Naruto's eyes opened and he took in the village gates, sensing a familiar chakra signature nearby. He looked around, searching for its owner. He found her, standing in the middle of the street with her head down, staring at the ground. Hey, Haku, did you come to see me off too? He called out to her. Baka, how could you go out with her? She yelled as she lifted her head, revealing the tears streaking her pale face. Naruto looked shocked, and walked over to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. What do you mean? Am I not allowed all of a sudden? He asked, sending the girl before him into a veritable rage. That's not what I mean, you asshole. How could you love her over me? She's just some lame-brained whore who's obsessed with getting in your bed. What has she got that I don't? She screamed, forcing Naruto to take a step back. After that, he just stood there, opening and closing his mouth like a fish. Naru, watching the interaction between the two, rolled her eyes before grabbing hold of Haku's arm and dragging her off to the side. All the others could see was Naru whispering into Haku's ear, and several shades of red make themselves known on her face once the two were finished with their conversation. Not only was Haku a shade of crimson that probably hadn't been discovered yet, she was also noticeably more cheerful. Many a time she glanced in Naruto's direction and blushed again. Can we go now? Sasuke asked, beginning to get annoyed with their immobility. Naruto nodded and walked out of the gate, turning back to wave at the two girls who were at that time looking at him, blushing and giggling. Instead of waving back, both of the girls ran up to him and kissed him on the cheek, making him freeze again. Naru rolled her eyes as she and Haku walked back into the village. Once they had left, Naruto unfroze and continued walking. Sasuke and Sakura looked between Naruto and the two girls, before shrugging and following Naruto. After a while, Sakura got bored with the silence and tried to strike up a conversation. "So Naruto, what do you know about this tea country?" she asked. As Naruto slowed down to tree jump next to his teammates, he hummed for a moment in thought before turning to Sakura. "All I know is that they have this big race every once in a while. To decide which family has control for that period of time until the next race, the participants have to get from a shrine on the mainland to another shrine on a nearby island. I see. Would our mission be something to do with this race? Possibly. The race is supposed to be held around this time, and the two families often hire shinobi to protect and aid the participants," he told her, turning back to the path ahead. Suddenly, Naruto stopped, his teammates crashing into his back as they could not react in time. The three genin fell to the ground, each landing in an incredibly uncomfortable position. "The hell did you do that for, Dobi? Don't just stop without warning us," Sasuke shouted at his blonde teammate as he climbed out of a bush. "Be quiet. That's no way to talk to an Uchiha. Learn some resp." Sasuke was cut off from his berating of Naruto by the aforementioned shinobi clamping his healthy hand over his mouth. He looked to the blonde nin's face to see his eyes dark, as if someone had just killed his puppy. Sasuke immediately relaxed, and Naruto removed his hand. "I said, be quiet. I mean it. We need to find somewhere to stop, now a tea shop, an inn, anything," Naruto said, slightly worrying his team. After a while they found a small tea shop, where they sat down and ordered. Sasuke and Sakura looked to Naruto for answers, but when he gave none, they decided to voice their concerns. "So, why did we have to stop here?" Sakura asked. Naruto stopped sipping from his tea and placed the cup on the table, his eyes closed. "I sensed something. It felt like some kind of rage, but it didn't feel evil at all. It felt as if an angel was angry," Naruto said cryptically, confusing the other two genin considerably. "And the problem was this divine fury was blocking my sense of direction. Currently, I have no idea where Tea Country is." "So what now? We can't just abandon the mission because you got lost," Sasuke almost yelled, before Naruto raised an open palm, signifying him to stop. "I never said we were going to quit. We are shinobi. Our job description is to work with what we are given to pass by any obstacle. We will not give up on this mission. However, another part of our job description is to understand the true power of information in its rawest form," Naruto said, confusing everyone once again. "In other words, it's time for some information gathering. Just remember, we are to keep our identities and intentions a secret. Nobody must suspect a thing. Now, go find yourselves a table and keep your ears open. If you find someone who might have something that can help us, do not hesitate to question them." Sasuke and Sakura nodded, before getting up from their seats and heading to opposite sides of the shop. After many cups of tea and sticks of dango while waiting, they finally found something. A group of people sitting near Sakura were talking about Tea Country. "Hey, what's going on in Tea Country?" one asked the others. "The entire Wasabi and Wagarashi families are gathering for the race. They say that new kid, Idate, is running for the Wasabi family," another said. "Idate? I heard he's real fast, fastest they've ever had?" "Yeah, but rumor is the Wagarashi family have hired Aim Nin to sabotage the Wasabi." "True, but the Wasabi have hired Konoha Nin, but their ninja supply is running low. Remember the invasion?" "Oh yeah, so it looks like the Wagarashi are winning this year. Too bad. The Wasabi did good over in the west this year." "So, we've been hired to help the Wasabi?" Sakura thought, listening to the men talking. "And Tea Country is to the west? Good. We have the information we need." The Rosette stood up from her seat and walked back to Naruto, who was once again calmly sipping his tea. "What have you discovered?" he asked, not once opening his eyes or putting down his cup. "We have been hired to aid the Wasabi family in their race, while the Wagarashi have hired a team of Aim Nin. The Wasabi runner is called Idate. Lastly, Tea Country is supposedly to the west of here," she told him quietly, not wanting anyone to hear them. "Good, we'll wait for Sasuke, see if he has anything to report," he said, before the raven-haired boy walked over to them. His team looked at him, while he simply huffed and looked away. "Sasuke, if you couldn't find anything, there's nothing to be ashamed about. You win some, you lose some. Shit happens, man. Whatever. Can we leave?" "Yeah, just let me pay the bill then we'll go," Naruto said, before he heard shouting from the other side of the shop. "I don't care who you are, kid. You gotta pay," a burly man in an apron shouted at a boy around their age. "But I don't have any money. I'm an orphan," the boy said, cowering from the large man. "Then I guess you'd better work off your debt," the man yelled, but stopped when a hand was placed on his shoulder. He spun around, ready to floor the person who interrupted him. All he found was Naruto standing behind him with a smile on his face. "Excuse me, sir, but if it's all right, I'll pay off the boy's debt. After all, I'm an orphan myself," he said, as he held out a bag of coins. The man blinked, then took the bag, turning back to the boy. Don't think this is over, kid. One day, nobody will be here to help you, he said, before walking through a set of double doors. Team 7 and the boy walked outside, and Naruto stretched his arms and legs. While stretching, he noticed a pouch hanging from the boy's belt. His eyes narrowed as he examined it. The boy noticed him looking and ran off, heading into the forest. Hey, you little brat. Get back here so I can tear you a new one, Naruto shouted as he chased the boy, Sakura and Sasuke close behind. Hell no. You'll have to catch me, the boy shouted back, before speeding up so all they could see was a cloud of dust being kicked up. Naruto slowed to a stop. Cursing at his inability to keep up with the kid, Sasuke and Sakura jumped down beside him, and told him to forget about it. Naruto turned without a word and sped off in a westerly direction, heading for Tea Country. In Tea Country? Ah, so you must be the leaf ninja I requested. A man with short gray hair wearing a simple kimono said as they entered a large compound. I am Jirocho Wasabi, leader of the Wasabi family. Welcome to Tea Country. I brought you here to. We know why we're here, Wasabi-san. We figured it out already. When does the race start? Naruto said, not in the mood for small talk. Oh, right, it starts soon, but our runner hasn't shown up yet. You mean Idate? Yes, he left a while ago, and hasn't been seen since, Jirocho said, before the boy from earlier came from around a corner. Idate. There you are. We've been looking for you. The boy saw who was standing in the middle of the path and tried to run away, but found himself blocked by the same blonde shinobi that had paid his bill. You owe me pay up, or I hit you with a shockwave in the cervical section of your spine, damaging the C1-C5 region and by proxy the phrenic nerves leading to the diaphragm. Unfortunately for you, you'll stop breathing, so if I were you I'd give me my money now, Naruto said. His eyes like ice. Idate was, to say the least, scared shitless and ripped the pouch off his belt. Passing it to Naruto. Naruto opened the bag and took out the correct amount before throwing the bag back to Idate. Next time, pay with your own money. Jirocho cleared his throat, getting Naruto and Idate's attention, before speaking again. If you're both quite finished, I will continue. The race starts soon, so if I were you I'd get to the start as soon as possible. Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke nodded, before beginning to walk out of the compound. When they got out of the gate, however, Naruto stopped abruptly once again. Naruto? Is something wrong? Sakura asked, actually starting to get worried about her blonde teammate. It happened again. The angel is angry, in Rice Country. Where are you going, brat? The bedridden Orochimaru said to the blonde girl before him. The darkness is somewhere near here, a neighboring country. This is my opportunity to rid the world of that menace. This isn't the time. We have to build our strength before we even attempt to destroy Konoha. Who said anything about Konoha? I just want to kill the darkness host, once and for all. Fine, but you will come back and aid me afterwards, and you will take a team of my ninja with you to keep an eye on you, he said, as 4 ninja disguised as Aim Nin walked into the room. This is Team Oboro, a squad based mainly on infiltration. That's why they're so good at their disguises. They also have in their possession an artifact that we stole from a megacure which used to belong to Konoha. If you should step out of line, they will not hesitate to kill you. Very well, you 4, if you're coming along for the ride, try to keep up, the girl said as she left the room, the 4 nins following her along one of the underground passages. One of the shinobi spoke up. Miss, we like to know our associates' names before we work with them. May I ask yours? Danielle Baptiste. Just call me Donnie. Most of Team 7 stood with Idate at the starting line of the race, waiting for the starting signal. As they waited, Naruto decided to get some info from Idate. Hey, kid. You got a problem with a shinobi or something? 'Cause the way I see it, you've been nothing but cold to us. Don't talk to me, or act like you know me. I want nothing to do with you, damn shinobi. Idate replied, not looking at Naruto once. Now that's not very nice. I'm trying to be civil, but you're making it very hard, so tell me, what is it? Revenge? What are you talking about? They probably killed someone close to you, right? Seriously, what the hell are you talking about? I'm talking about why you hate shinobi. There must be some reason, right? It's none of your concern. Just shut up, and let me win my race. Okay, no need to get snippy, just show us the way, monsieur, Naruto said to the brown-haired boy, his voice coated in sarcasm. Idate just rolled his eyes and turned away. The race will begin in 3, 2, 1. Hajime, an old man shouted out, with the contestants running out onto the course. Idate, however, decided to go in a completely different direction, the other way. That kid is gonna blow my last nerve, I swear, Naruto growled, before running after him. Sakura and Sasuke glanced at each other before following their teammate. Hey, kid. What in the 9 hells do you think you're doing? This is a better place to set off from, because of the winds, the currents, and wait a minute, there are 9 hells? I think so. I mean, some of the people I've met should be going through at least 2, maybe 3 or 4. Whatever, just come on. I picked this place especially, it'll give us a head start. Idade shouted before running down and jumping into the boat moored at the shore. Naruto followed him and jumped in beside him, as did Sakura and Sasuke. This guy seems pretty hot-headed and energetic, reminds me of you, Dobi, Sasuke said, but shut up after a glare was sent his way. So, where are we headed? Sakura asked, looking out into the distance. Nagi Island, just across the waters. The other racers will get stuck in a storm where they're starting. That's why we're starting here. The winds and currents are much better for sailing over here. I see, good decision. Idate, first off, we need to make sure we have everything ready just in case we're attacked. Attacked? What chance of attack is there in the middle of the sea? Idate asked, forgetting the abilities of a ninja. Shinobi can walk on water using chakra. Idate, on the way here we heard talk of the rival family hiring ninja as well, and since the Leaf is kinda understaffed, they're most likely stronger than we are. If so, we need everything ready for an attack. Everyone? Naruto asked the group, who nodded. I have kunai, shuriken and ninja wire ready for a Ryuka no Jutsu. I'm also ready to perform Gukaku no Jutsu and Chidori, Sasuke said, showing his supplies. I've got a few kunai and shuriken in my holster, and I have enough chakra to perform basic genjutsu and medical techniques. I also have some medicine from Tsunade, Sasuke said, showing her supplies as well. Good, now that we're set, we should be ready for anything. Naruto started, but stopped suddenly. Those angry angels again? Sasuke asked with a smirk. If I were you, I'd stop smirking, because before I said they were getting closer and now here. Naruto shouted, and pulled out pestilence. He fired a shot into the air, seemingly at nothing. What they didn't expect was the blast to come into contact with a blast of red energy flying towards the boat and explode, rocking the boat considerably. The hell? Why would an angel attack us? Sakura shouted over the waves, but Naruto jumped off the boat with his sword drawn. Instead of answering her, he swung randomly around him, several metallic clangs sounding around him, as if he was actually blocking an attack. Come on, this isn't a fair fight unless you show your face, angel, Naruto said, gripping his sword tighter as the attacks seemed to stop. Something materialized in the air above him, and his eyes narrowed as he took in its interesting features. A girl with long blonde hair and blue eyes, wearing a tight green shirt and similarly tight red pants, floated in the air, held aloft by a pair of mechanical-looking wings. They had gold plating connected to her back, with some kind of engraving on it. From the plating sprouted long blue feathers which seemed to be made completely of energy. In the girl's hands was a golden staff with blades at the end, and a smoking barrel below said blades. Happy now, darkness? You've seen my face, now you can fight me, right? The girl asked, taking aim at Naruto once more. Yes, very happy after all. It's not every day you see a face that Naruto said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. The girl blushed, and dropped her aim for a moment before raising the staff once more. If you think sweet talk is gonna work on me, think again. I know you're the darkness, and that means you have to die. So, you're the Angelus host, huh? Good to see I have a reputation. So this is why I've been hearing those angry angels. It's you. You've been in my head for around a couple of days now, beautiful, he said with a smirk, making the girl blush again. So, you tell me your name and I'll tell you mine. I suppose since you're going to die, it can't hurt. My name is Danielle Baptiste, but you can call me Donnie. Nice name. I'm Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze Estacado. Estacado? I should have known you're related to Jackie, aren't you? Jackie? Who's Jackie? You don't know him? But he's an Estacado? Jackie was a previous host, one that existed during your father's life. But how? I thought the power transferred from person to person. Anthony had 2 sons, your grandfather, and Jackie's grandfather. When your grandfather died, Jackie got the power. Instead of Minato, it works kind of like a zigzag when you look at your family tree. I see, confusing, but that doesn't matter now. I guess I am related to Jackie. Does that mean we can stop all this, and maybe go out sometime? Naruto said, but the reply was less than positive. A blast of red energy hit the water beside him, evaporating it instantly and making a plume of steam rise into the air. I told you sweet talk wouldn't work, and still won't, regardless of who you're related to. Fine, but tell those nin you're with to beat it. The girl made a gesture, and the 4 disguised Auto nin jumped out of the water and ran towards the boat, taking out weapons of all kinds. Sasuke began firing his Housenka no Jutsu at the shinobi, but they simply dodged and continued their warpath. A quick and powerful Kuroyaba from Naruto stopped them in their tracks. Sasuke, Sakura, get Idate out of here. I got enough on my plate right now without babysitting you two. Whatever, Dobi, just don't die. Sasuke said, before grabbing hold of Idate and pulling him out of the boat and onto the water. Sakura simply nodded and ran after Sasuke, the aim nin on their tails. Looks like it's just you and me. Sweet cheeks, why don't we make this a little more interesting, huh? Naruto said, before a cloud of black smoke surrounded the two, obscuring them from view. Naruto manifested the darkness, his demon arms swaying wildly as they sensed the presence of their rival, the Angelus. Wow, even the darkness is glad to see you. Guess you're pretty popular. Just shut up and fight, Blondie, Donnie said, before swinging her staff at Naruto. He caught the golden blade with a tentacle and pulled on it, bringing Donnie down to his height. In the process he swung his sword at her, which she blocked with a wing. She batted him away with the wing, forcing him into the cloud and out of view. That was probably the worst move you could have made in the world ever, Naruto's voice said from every direction under the sun. Figuratively speaking, more demon arms sprang from the cloud and flew at Donnie, just as they had for the Auto Nin in the Forest of Death. This time, however, she was ready for it. She knew what the darkness was capable of, and how to counter it. She beat her wings a few times, kicking off into the air as the demon arms followed her into the air. She gripped her staff and held down the trigger. Charging up a shot, she released the trigger, firing the energy shot into the swarm of tentacles, where it exploded, blowing away the tentacles and the smoke. What she saw behind the smoke made her suddenly very afraid. What's the matter? Scared? Naruto asked as he tensed his hand, the ball of shadows in his palm pulsing dangerously. You should feel honored that I'm ending this with my most powerful attack, Kurai Kiki. The ball exploded outwards as it did in the fight against Neji, the black beam hitting Donnie in the chest and sending her even higher into the sky. Once she had reached the zenith of her ascension, she began to fall, smoking. Back to the water she slammed into the water's surface, sinking into its depths. Well, that's that. Guess I'd better go find the others. Just a moment, Naruto. Perhaps you should try to make the girl see things the way you do. You mean bring her to my side? Indeed. I suppose she couldn't really die if she stayed under too long, and if she lives, she'd just try to kill me again. So the only way to ensure that she doesn't attack me anymore would be to make her not want to. Plus, it means another potential mate, the darkness said with a small chuckle. Damn perverted timeless entities, Naruto muttered under his breath. Before diving under the water, he found Donnie floating lifelessly in the water and swam towards her, wrapping her body in one of his demon arms. Once she was secure in its grip, he swam back up and climbed onto the water's surface before running towards Nagi Island, a black cloud hanging above him to block the sun. On the island. So, you're the leaf ninja hired to protect little Idate, huh? Said a man with shoulder-length dark blue hair, wearing a skin-tight suit and carrying an umbrella as he dropped down in front of Sakura. Sasuke and Idate. Sasuke looked up at his face to find an aim hite on his forehead. Aoi-sensei. What are you doing here? Idate asked. Walking up to him, he jumped back to stand with the two leaf nin. However, when Aoi pulled out a sword made completely from lightning. The sword of the Thunder God. How the hell do you get that? Sakura screamed, staring wide-eyed at the blade. Aoi swung his sword experimentally a few times. A low hum emitted from it as it flew through the air. This is one of the reasons I became a missing nin, Pinky, the sword of the Thunder God. One of the weapons of the Nidaime. It just so happens that your little friend Idate there was the one who got it for me, the missing nin said, pointing the sword at the runner in question. Wa Idate? Is he telling the truth? Sakura asked Idate, who hung his head. Unfortunately so, I heard about that. Last year a kid who failed last year's Chunin exams got conned by his sensei into stealing a forbidden scroll and the legendary Thunder God sword, Sasuke said, his arms crossed over his chest. And it was so easy, too. I know now why you failed the first exam, Idate, Aoi exclaimed, making Idate shake in rage. You bastard! He yelled, pulling a pocket knife from his boot and charging the older shinobi. Aoi used the thunder sword to block the knife, which conducted the electricity and sent bolts up into Idate's arm. Now, is that any way to treat the sensei that helped you so much? Helped me? You did nothing but manipulate me, you rotten snake. Idate, stop. There's no way we can fight someone like this. He's Junin level at least. Sakura cried, not wanting Idate to suffer anymore at the hands of the missing nin. She still had that delusional dream that a shinobi life could be led without killing. Unfortunately, I agree we need to retreat and regroup, and find Naruto. More than anything else, his abilities would be very useful in this fight, but I'm afraid we don't have that luxury, Sasuke told them. Before pulling Idate and Sakura away from the area, they began jumping through the trees, Idate holding onto Sasuke's back. Once Aoi was far behind, they stopped on a branch to take a breath. So, what now, Sasuke-kun? Sakura asked, looking over at him. Well, if we continue on in this direction we should reach the shrine, but those aim nin are likely to be on that path waiting for us. Then how do we get around them? My guess is, there'll be no way around them if we want to get to the shrine in time, and at our current strength we can't beat them not without Naruto. But how do we find him? Something tells me that if we get as far as we can without finding them, then battle as hard as possible, he'll find us. He's weird like that. You guys sure think highly of your teammate, Idate spoke up, surprising the others. What do you mean? Sakura asked. Well, you think he can beat Aoi sensei, for one secondly, he can apparently find people from long distances like this. Well, for the second he has heightened senses, so that's easy for the first. Well, if you knew him, you'd know why we know that he can beat Aoi. He beat Neji, Gaara, me, Sasuke listed off. And Kabuto, Orochimaru's assistant. Sakura added, making Sasuke raise an eyebrow. When did he beat him? When he went with Jiraiya to get Tsunade-sama, he ripped him to pieces, apparently most definitely dead. You know, that's the first time I've seen you not get squeamish over death. Nice, Sasuke said, making Sakura blush. Further up the road, well, we're here. The Dobi better hurry up, or we're gonna die, Sasuke said as they neared the bridge to the shrine. You people must have a death wish. Do you really think you can win? Aoi said as he and the other 3 shinobi dropped from the trees. Not really, we just want to find someone. Find someone? Well, maybe you can find them in the afterlife. Oh, I don't think that'll be the case, Sasuke said with a smirk as music began playing through the trees. Indiana Jones theme. Before either party could say another word, Naruto swung into the clearing with Dani in his arms and a leather hat on his head. He held onto a demon arm which was latched onto a branch, before letting go and swinging feet first into Aoi's head, knocking him to the ground. Hell yeah. 3 points, ya dirty whore, Naruto yelled as he stamped down on Aoi's chest, making him cough and retch over the ground. Naruto, Sakura cried as she ran over to him. Are you okay? I'm fine, but this girl isn't. She took a hit from the same move I used on Neji, so she needs serious medical attention. Wasn't she the girl you were fighting? Sasuke asked, looking over her unconscious body. Yeah, but I have a feeling she's gonna change her mind and join us, Naruto said with a grin. He turned to face the other aim nin and punched his palm. Okay, who's ready to die first? You think you're pretty tough, huh? One of the nin asked. You obviously haven't heard of me, the guy who beat Gaara, Kabuto, etc., Naruto told them, making their eyes widen. Yeah, that guy. We should probably get out of here, one of the nin said to the others, who nodded their heads and all of them disappeared, leaving Aoi in the dust. Okay, now to kill the guy with the cool hair, Naruto said. Looking over at the grounded Rokusho, the missing nin got up on his hands and knees and glared up at Naruto. Do you, cough, really think you can, cough, beat me, kid? I'm a Junin of AIM, and the wielder of the Nidaim's Thunder God sword, he said as he managed to get back up on his feet. Whatever you may be Junin of AIM, but I'm Jinchuriki of Konoha, he said, making Aoi sweat. Jinchuriki? Why, you're Uzumaki Naruto, right? The Kyuubi brat? Man, I was gonna manipulate you into getting the sword instead of Idate, but complications arose. I was forced to choose someone else. Just so happens I get Chief of Interrogation's little brother, Aoi said, pointing his sword at Idate once again. Shoulda known, shouldn't I? Morino Idate? Naruto asked, looking sideways at the runner and former shinobi. At his nod, Naruto turned back to Aoi. I knew there was a reason he hated shinobi, but that's irrelevant at the moment. Right now it's time to kick your ass into last week. Aoi growled and sprinted forwards, hoping for a quick and easy impalement. What he got was Naruto spinning around his sword thrust and nicking his arm with the Jinchuriki's own sword. The nuke nin swung to his side, which Naruto blocked, making Aoi smirk. He thought the metal of the blade would conduct the lightning down to Naruto's arm, but he had forgotten about the red leather wrapped around the handle. Naruto gave his own smirk, bearing an elongated canine as he began to overpower the Junin. Sparks flying from both swords. Naruto got bored eventually and elbowed Aoi in the stomach, knocking him back and giving him time to pierce the ground. As Aoi ran forwards again, Naruto swung his sword up, knocking Aoi into the air. Sword uppercut, he said as he followed the aim nin into the air. Once he was just above Aoi, he made a quick succession of front flips, his sword cutting into Aoi every time. Flip saw. When he was finished, he slammed Aoi into the ground with a powerful axe kick. Naruto landed next to the fallen aim nin and held out his bandaged right arm, where chakra began to run through the seals and into his hand. I really can't be bothered to continue fighting you here, so I'm not going to, Naruto said, making Aoi let out a sigh of relief. No, I'm just gonna kill you right here, right now. Aoi started sweating heavily and his eyes widened as the yellow ball of chakra formed in his palm. Not that anyone had noticed, but there was a bead of sweat running down Naruto's brow from the strain of controlling the ball of chakra. Ko had been recuperating from Naruto's insane training sessions, and Naruto hadn't thought it would be necessary, so he didn't bring the small bat. Now, he was regretting that decision just before Naruto drove the spear into Aoi's chest. Dani opened her eyes to see Naruto with the explosive chakra ball halfway into the nuke and her eyes widened considerably when it tore directly through him. Body parts and blood flying everywhere as they did with Kabuto. Eventually he released the jutsu and stood up. His clothes and face caked in blood as he stood over the corpse for some strange reason. Dani then felt very scared. Just what is this kid? He just tore through a guy with a sphere of chakra mixed with darkness energy, and now he's just standing over him like it was nothing. There's no way he's human, or anything close. I'd get up there, now or this'll all be worthless, Naruto told the former shinobi, who nodded and ran up the path to the shrine. With Naruto and the others running after him, they reached the top of the hill, with Idate and Naruto running in front. Sasuke and Sakura behind them, with Dani in Sasuke's arms while Sakura used medical jutsu on her. Dani just kept staring at the back of Naruto's head, not registering anything else. There's no point me trying to fight him again, not for a long time. I'll just get killed, but I have to find out more about him. Looks like our deal is over. Orochimaru, well, it wasn't really a deal. I never intended to help you, but now, I will help Konoha destroy you. So what did you learn? Hanabi inquired. A lot, and it will take me a while to sort through all the information, but I got the basics on angels and goddesses. I just can't believe that I summoned a real angel, Hinata replied. She was hugged by Naruto, who grinned and said, why not? You're my little angel, Hinata-chan. Blushing, Hinata remained silent and tucked herself into Naruto's chest. They proceeded with the summoning after removing Hinata from the circle. Tenten pursued Hinata and obtained Tsutoraiki, a thunder spirit. When Yakumo was summoned, things became interesting once more after she completed the summoning procedure. A red and black light appeared. A young woman was sitting on the pedestal when the light went out. The young lady had shoulder-length white hair, light brown skin, a pair of DD breasts, and what appeared to be two tiny wings that were black at the top and red at the bottom. She was wearing knee-high dark red stockings and a slender, nearly see-through, dark red nightgown that left nothing to the imagination. Hello, my name is Sadesna. How may I help you today? The woman smiled as she turned to face Yakumo, who was flushed by her attire. Replied, well, Sadesna, me and my friends were summoning spirits to help us train, but I don't think you can help me in those clothes. Before asking, what would you want help with? Sadesna glanced at her attire and waved her hand, revealing that she was wearing a red kimono. Well, I would like help with my genjutsu, said Yakumo. No longer flushed, Sadesna cocked her head, and Yakumo clarified, the illusion arts. If it's illusions, then you came to the right succubus. The price isn't too high either, Sadesna said with a smile. What price and what can you do? Yakumo asked, assuming that her nightgown was a succubus-related explanation. Well, all succubuses can perform illusions. It's how we hide our appearance and feed if we don't want to sleep with our chosen meal. We perform illusions mainly two ways, Sadesna responded, pointing to a tail that had not been visible up until this point. As she explained, a spade at the end of her tail opened. We can use our tail, she said. All we have to do is put this on any part of the body and we can make our meals have wet dreams. Or the more powerful succubi can do the same thing and much more by just looking at someone. As for the price, all I want is for you to gather some food for me. I will teach you how to collect it through performing sexual acts, Sadesna replied, laughing as Yakumo performed a superb tomato impression. Don't be so shy, honey. I can see the lust coming off of you right now. Still feeling ashamed, Yakumo questioned, you can see lust? Oh yes, I can see the emotions you are giving off in waves. Sadesna replied. She could see that Yakumo had a lot of affection for someone and lusted after them, but that wasn't all. She also saw that the teenager had a near-obedient level of trust in this individual. Sadesna glanced beyond the barrier she was in and noticed the boy Ano, young Mana, who had the girl's attention and, based on her observations, the attention of every young woman there. Sadesna looked back at Yakumo and remarked, it wouldn't be too hard to teach you how to collect lust and it will get you closer to that young man over there. If I say yes, can you teach me to see emotions and cast illusions with only a look? Was Yakumo's final question for Sadesna, despite the fact that it was an alluring offer. Of course I can, it will cost you extra, but it can be done, she replied. With a nod, Yakumo remarked, you have a deal. With a slightly wider smile that revealed flawless white teeth, Sadesna said, then come here, young lady. Yakumo approached the succubus after dissolving the inner barrier when Sadezna placed a hand on Yakumo's chin and raised her head. Yakumo felt a wave of information wash over her. Sadezna leaned forward to plant a passionate kiss on the preoccupied Yakumo. After a few moments, Yakumo regained consciousness and practically jumped away. Why did you do that? Yakumo practically yelled. Yakumo was about to inquire what Sadezna meant when she smiled and said, "I was just getting you started." She felt a little hotter and her heart was beating a little quicker with a giggle and a flash of red light. Sadezna went on, "You can take care of that yourself and collect the lust off yourself, but you will get a lot more if you ask for a little help." Everyone asked her if she was okay after the rest of the seal fell, and she replied that she was. Everyone left to get to know their new friend after receiving their own summons. The final two individuals in the field were Yakumo and Naruto. Yakumo was debating herself while Naruto was removing the seal from the ground, but it was difficult because she was still getting hotter and it was becoming intolerable since she was so close to Naruto and knew he could provide for her needs. Things were only getting worse. Eventually, it got to be too much, and after Naruto finished breaking the seal, Yakumo told him what she needed and why, and not that she needed the explanation. Though Naruto would have been pleased to assist, what teenager wouldn't, after all, and he could see what she had stashed in her closet on the floor. It ended up being one of Yakumo's best mornings and nights ever. Ino was going through one of the most peculiar weeks of her life. She didn't know why, but she started focusing on Naruto and noticed that he was much more intimate with the girls than she had initially believed at first. It was just training and sparring together, but after she followed Naruto home from school one day, she realized it was more. In addition to going to Ichiraku Ramen, Naruto would take the girls he hung out with on what appeared to be dates. They occasionally went there, but they also frequented much fancier eateries. Ino also learned that he had more friends outside of their class, including Anko, whom she knew, and others who were already ninja. Ino didn't believe that any rational person would simply hang out with Anko. At first, Ino believed that Naruto might be going out with all of them and that none of them had figured it out yet. Ino would love to share that story when Naruto went shopping with the majority of them after school the following day. That notion was blown out of the water. Sasasha, Hanabi, Hinata, a girl named Yakumo, and a girl named Tenten were all there with Naruto. Looking at shirts, shorts, pants, and other random items would have been Ino's typical shopping day. Although Ino was certain that Naruto was extremely bored, he stayed with them and even paid for all of the clothes they purchased after she repeatedly conned Shoji and Shikamaru into taking her shopping. How Naruto managed to have enough money to take 5 girls shopping was another mystery. After all, they weren't just purchasing the cheapest items. Ino finally understood why Naruto had not gone crazy from boredom at the final stop. He was simply anticipating the trip's final destination. A lingerie store that Ino would never take Choji or Shikamaru to. Naruto went where no other man should go, at the women's changing rooms, and Ino was taken aback when the store clerk not only greeted him politely but also led him and the others straight into the changing area. "How come you let a guy into the women's changing rooms with no fuss?" Ino approached the store manager. The manager, who Ino was fairly certain was the proprietor, replied, "Oh, that group come in here every once in a while. The first time I said that a young man shouldn't come back there, but the girls said it was fine. I still insisted that they may be fine with it, but the other customers wouldn't. Then one of the girls brought up the point that with all of them only one room was left open, so it was basically just them. I let it go then because they had a point." "Can I try something on?" Ino asked, turning back to the changing room before turning to face the manager. After glancing at Ino, the manager inquired as to whether she was certain she felt safe having the boy inside. After giving a nod, Ino headed to the changing areas she entered. After doing a quick henge, she will always remember the next 10 minutes. She appeared to go unnoticed by the girls, and Naruto was too preoccupied to notice her. The girls were trying on a variety of items, including thongs, frilly bras, and teddies. They were so engrossed in their own world that Ino might as well have been taking notes. Sasasha was never seen wearing anything other than a thong and appeared to prefer the darker hues. In addition to liking the see-through teddy, Hanabi aimed for a skimpy appearance by wearing as little clothing as possible while still being somewhat dressed. It was one of the ways that Hanabi had discovered that the elders in her clan were particularly offended by revealing her ostentatious clothing. Hinata was more understated but never one to be outdone. Her flexibility required her to wear a thong. Anything else would have gotten in the way. Tenten was wearing a corset because she appeared to enjoy items with strings, while Yakumo appeared to enjoy leather. In this personal striptease, what was Naruto doing? He was merely enjoying it, occasionally making a remark. The fact that they all allowed him to touch them startled Ino. The girl's thighs, stomach, and sides were the only intimate parts. In addition, it appeared that the changing area was growing hotter, so Ino left right away. Thank God they weren't shopping. They were just sparring, because it took Ino a week to summon the courage to follow Naruto. Once more she noticed that they were holding back in class. When she watched those matches, they never demonstrated the ability to use elemental chakra or moved so quickly in class. They sparred for a few hours before stopping, which Ino was relieved about because she had to return home shortly. Ino believed that everyone would return home, but Naruto and Sasasha remained in the clearing while Hinata and Hanabi left. Naruto questioned, "So Sasasha, the usual?" Sasasha smiled as she said, "No, let's go a bit further than that." "As you wish," Naruto replied with a smile of his own. He then produced a scroll and, with a puff of smoke, revealed a futon on a mat. Sasasha removed her top, revealing a black bra, while Ino wondered what they were doing when the bra also came off. Ino almost fell from the tree she was in when Ino turned to face Naruto. He was completely unafraid. She noticed that Sasasha had removed her shoes and was lowering her pants. When she turned to face her again, Sasasha was now essentially naked in front of Ino. Sasasha's nipples were dark pink and she had a solid B cup. When Ino examined Sasasha's body, she saw no imperfections. Sasasha had long legs and a taut butt that was just the right size. She had toned muscle and fat in all the right places on her body. Naruto removed the chainmail he was wearing and unzipped his jacket. When Ino saw it, her mouth dropped open. Naruto's upper body was completely fat-free. He also had the start of a six-pack and well-defined arms and chest. Sasasha, wearing only a black thong, lay face down on the futon. "You are always more open than Hinata or the others are," said Naruto. "They always wear a bathing suit." "That's not that surprising," Sasasha replied. "Hinata already has a C cup at 13 and is a bit embarrassed about it and how fast her body is developing." Playfully, Naruto said, "Only a bit?" as he began to massage. "Okay, very embarrassed about it, which is why she always wears those coats to hide it in public," Sasasha replied. "Hanabi on the other hand is holding back a little because her sister loves you and she doesn't want to get in the way." "I figured," Naruto said, nodding. "I mean, Hanabi is at a small C cup and only a little bit behind Hinata." Sasasha remarked, "Less talk, more massage." The recent conversation left Ino in a state of shock. Does he do this with every girl he spends time with? Has Hinata told Naruto that she has a crush on him? To what extent have they progressed together? When Sasasha groaned while Naruto worked on her inner thigh, Ino was startled out of her reverie. Ino observed as Naruto used Sasasha as a tool. Any guy would love the sound Sasasha was producing. Stopping, Naruto declared, "I'm done with this side, Sasasha." Naruto worked from the bottom up while Sasasha smiled and turned over. Ino could have sworn Naruto rubbed Sasasha's thong-covered pussy as she watched him work her body like a pro. Naruto proceeded to work his way up her body, working her arms, shoulders, and stomach in addition to running his hands along the sides of her breasts. When Ino thought they were finished, Naruto said, "May I continue?" Sasasha nodded, and Naruto began kneading her breasts. Her smile widened as Naruto began to pinch her other nipple and suck on her breast. Sasasha began to groan. The thong slid down her legs as Naruto's other hand worked its way down her body. By this time, Ino was beginning to exercise herself as Naruto caressed Sasasha's pussy and spread her legs. Ino observed. In order to stop herself from moaning, Ino began to bite her lip and stroke herself through her underwear as Sasasha's groans grew louder. Naruto kissed his way down Sasasha's body, working his middle and index fingers in and out of her pussy. He took his fingers off her and began licking her when he reached her pussy. When Naruto began nibbling on Sasasha's clit, she let out a louder moan and almost arrived. Ino was working herself crazily while she watched all of this from her tree. At this stage, she was envisioning replacing Sasasha. Ino was biting her lip so forcefully that she almost caused it to bleed as hard as she tried. She was whimpering and groaning softly. Sasasha screamed softly, drawing her attention back to her. After licking the fluids from Sasasha's hand and face, Naruto emerged from between his legs and remarked, "Well, that was fun." Sasasha paused to catch her breath before saying, "Well, we could have more fun with our new friend." "Are you sure? We don't know her that well?" inquired Naruto. "I'm sure it's fine," Sasasha remarked, adding that she appeared to be having fun. Taking out a kunai with a thread on it, Naruto tossed it into the tree with a shrug. With Ino approaching, he pulled the string back to himself. With a playful glance at Ino, Sasasha said, My, Ino, did you enjoy the show?" Nothing came out of Ino's attempt to deny that she was watching. Naruto approached her and grasped Ino's hand. There was a clear liquid on her fingers. "Yes, Ino, I think you did." Naruto grinned. Naruto brought the hand to him and slowly licked off the liquid as Ino turned away from him. Blushing the more Ino licked, the redder his face became. "You don't taste bad, Ino," Naruto replied. "Would you like me to finish where you left off?" The question shocked Ino, who turned to face Naruto and questioned, "How can you ask someone that?" The 5 people I've asked all said yes, Naruto said with a shrug. Ino questioned in shock. 5 people? Yes, Naruto is good at what he does and always makes sure his partner is satisfied, Sasasha replied. But that's not right, Sasasha, are you okay with him having more than one girlfriend? Ino responded. Sasasha laughed and responded, Naruto only has one girlfriend, the rest of us are just friends with benefits. If he wanted all of us as his girlfriends at the same time, none of us would have a problem with it. Naruto has enough stamina to go a few rounds with all of us at the same time and still be ready for more. Ino stated, there's no way he can do that, you would be surprised at what I can do. Ino, I've got a lot of stamina and can recover very quickly. I could demonstrate if you want me to, said Naruto. How? Inquired Ino. Well, I could call Hinata and Hanabi back here and screw them and Sasasha into the ground, Naruto replied. All my girls love how I treat and pamper them, they would come back here without a second thought. Ino questioned, how can you say that, Naruto? You're just using them. Ino, that's not the case at all, Sasasha responded. He only goes as far as we want him to. You heard him ask me if he could continue earlier, and if I said no he would have stopped. If you need more proof that Naruto isn't using us, look at his pants. When Ino saw Naruto at full mast in his pants, she blushed. Sasasha went on, he hasn't asked me to satisfy him even after he satisfied me. If anything, Ino, we're using him to relieve stress and he asks for nothing in return, no matter how much he wants to, and that thing looks painful. Ino remarked, but that's not right, Naruto questioned, Ino, would you allow me to continue if I were a girl? When Naruto inserted his hands into the ram seal, a puff of smoke appeared, and Ino gave him a perplexed look before responding, maybe, but you aren't. After the smoke cleared, Ino was able to see Naruto in her full splendor as a woman. She had perky breasts with pink nipples and a B cup. The shocked expression on Ino's face made Naruto smile. Ino remarked, that's just a hinge, touch me, Ino. Naruto responded, if it is a hinge, then it will pop as soon as you do. Ino grabbed a handful of Naruto's very feminine chest instead of what she thought was his masculine chest. When Naruto moaned softly, Ino almost jumped out of her skin. Ino said, that's not possible, her eyes wide with surprise. Naruto grinned and replied, nothing's impossible if you work for it, Ino. This is a jutsu I made because I wanted to know what I would look like as a girl. According to what Hana found out about this jutsu, it suppresses all the male chromosomes in my body and turns me into a real girl. What else does it do? Ino asked. So you're really a girl right now, and Naruto nodded. Well, what I've learned by being like this is that it brings out suppressed emotions to the front of my mind and I have less self-control, so when I'm like this I need to get one of the girls to help satisfy me because as you can imagine I have a lot of suppressed lust, said Naruto. Like right now my pussy is soaked and the juices are running down my legs. When Naruto touched Ino's face, Ino's blush intensified. Naruto gave her a kiss and a smile. When the female Naruto kissed Ino, her eyes widened in surprise. Ino simply went into autopilot after Naruto silently licked her lips to get her to open up. When Naruto withdrew, he turned to face Ino, who was looking glazed over from the intense kiss. Ino, are you bisexual? He asked, and Ino nodded her head shyly. Well, thank you for your honesty, Naruto replied. Most girls, even if they were, wouldn't admit it. May I continue? And keep in mind, if you say no I'm just going to play with Sasasha in front of you. If she stays like this, I won't lose my virginity, and he will satisfy me. Ino thought for a moment, blushing. Hi. As Naruto unbuttoned Ino's shirt, he grinned and gave her another kiss while kneading Ino's breasts out of her bra. Naruto began sucking on her neck. Naruto sensed that Ino had a solid cup before using a kunai to cut off the bindings around Ino's stomach. Naruto removed her shirt and bra. Ino, you should eat more because you're just skin and bone, Naruto said, massaging Ino's sides. When Ino said, what, I don't want to get fat. Sasasha remarked, well Ino, that's the great thing about us. Kunoichi, following her statement, if we train all the fat goes to the right places and you also gain more muscle than fat. She stepped behind Ino and began massaging her sides. Women are supposed to have 11% body fat at minimum to be healthy. I don't want to get too muscular either, Ino replied. Sasasha asked, do I look muscular, Ino? According to Sasasha, if you don't try to get too muscular you won't. You'll just be toned like I am. Ino shook her head no. After Ino promised to give it some thought, Naruto began sucking and slightly nipping Ino's breast. Ino responded with a whimpering moan. Sasasha began rubbing Ino's pussy through her panties and wrappings. After lifting her skirt, Ino groaned more loudly and was becoming more and more damp. Before long, Ino let out a loud moan as she approached. Sasasha raised her hand to Ino's face and said, my, Ino, I think you may have just ruined your panties, adding, could you clean this up for me, Ino? When Ino came down from her orgasmic high, she couldn't help but blush at what she was doing as she started to lick and suck her fluids off Sasha's fingers. "Ino, did you like that?" Still feeling ashamed about discovering her taste, Ino nodded in response to Naruto's question. "Well, Ino, we're just getting started." Ino's mind was just refocusing, and Sasha had a very contented expression on her face as they lay on the futon Naruto had laid out earlier. An hour later. It was a little small, but it was okay because Ino and Sasha were almost on top of Naruto. "Well, Ino, I hope that you think about training and come find us if you need some help or just need to get out some stress," Naruto replied. Ino cradled Naruto's right breast and remarked, "Sure, Naruto-kun, but I'm tired, so just lay where you are." "Well, this is nice and all, but I think we should get dressed before some random ninja runs through the training ground," Sasha said, getting up and stretching as Naruto ran his hand through her long hair, the ponytail that had been undone a while ago, and along her back. "I guess you're right, my dad is probably wondering where I am," Ino said, stretching a little. They all finished getting dressed and left for home after Naruto got out from under Ino and kissed her on the head before putting his pants and underwear back on and turning back into a man with a puff of smoke. After a council meeting, Ino found her father lounging in the living room. When she got home, he looked up, paused, and then said, "What happened to your bindings, honey?" He reminded her that Naruto had interrupted them earlier and gestured slightly toward her exposed stomach to convey his meaning. "I was training with some friends and they got ripped up, so I took them off," Ino explained. "Who?" He raised an eyebrow in question. "During training, Sasha Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki pointed something out to me. Don't I eat enough, Dad?" did Ino ask. This startled her father, who remarked, "Well, if you were to train more, you would need to eat more of a balanced diet to help you recover faster and build muscle." Ino said, "Sasha wore me out today without putting up a fight, so I'm going to train more. Can you help me?" Taking his daughter's training a little more seriously, he smiles and says, "I'd love to." After gaining a few pounds with her father's help, Ino began training with everyone, meeting Enko more frequently and learning from her. Ino began learning the Habi fighting style and a few other things from Enko, including poisons, antidotes, Fuinjutsu, and, because she was a Yamanaka, some interrogation, which gave Ino a good look at the darker side of being a ninja. The majority of her clan had water and earth affinities, so Ino was shocked to learn that she shared Naruto's elemental affinity. When she also began working on the wind control exercises, but they proceeded as quickly as she had anticipated. After obtaining the gravity seal, Ino began working with the group more in an attempt to catch up, but she was a little disheartened when she realized how far ahead the others were. They could probably take out a Chunin one-on-one and all of them could work out Enko. As the rest of the group gained a better understanding of their elements, Naruto and Sasha began to work with a second element, water for Naruto and wind for Sasha. Although they had not mastered their elements, they had control that most Chunin would be proud of. With the assistance of her angel Cool Mint, Hinata began learning the celestial tongue, but it was very challenging because merely uttering a few words would exhaust a person. Her angel assured her that it would become easier with time and that once she discovered her true name, she would be able to see a person's soul. At first, she could only see the size of the soul, but as she practiced, she was able to see various traits, such as whether the person was good or bad, and with a little focus, she was able to determine whether or not they were lying. Additionally, it served as a sensory ability outside of the Byakugan, as she was able to see a soul far farther than her Byakugan without wasting chakra. Over the next few months, Yakumo was able to work with Naruto in order to begin learning from her new friend Sadesna. They started by working on casting genjutsu with a touch, which she was getting pretty good at, but she would need to gather a lot more lust if she wanted to learn to cast with a look. In order to modify a few earth jutsu, Hanabi used her spirit. For example, she was able to use stone skin with a single hand seal and reduce the stone gauntlets from 3 inches of stone covering her hands and forearms to roughly half an inch using the same amount of stone. In addition to continuing to work with Naruto on her kenjutsu, Tenten was working on controlling her weapons in the air and using her spirit to magnetize some of them. At least it was a free period, or Naruto might have had to do something drastic, like the time he managed to get a pair of cat ears and a tail on Mizuki that matched his hair color and wouldn't come off until the end of the day, or the time he was able to install a water balloon launcher on the ceiling and launch balloons filled with paint at Iruka. The academy was the same as ever, and Naruto couldn't be more bored if he tried. Naruto glanced around at what the girls were doing. Hanabi was just thinking to herself, Hinata was going over the classwork, Sasha was playing the violin, which Iruka didn't mind since every ninja needs a hobby, and Ino was reading a sealing book that Naruto had given her, just the fundamentals. Naruto remarked, "This is so boring, you would be interested in class if they were teaching seals or henjutsu," Sasha said with a smile, setting down the violin she was playing. At that, Naruto smiled and remarked, I could teach those classes. You probably could, but there's no need to stroke your ego, said Hanabi, rolling her eyes. As she read the book in her hand, Ino remarked, why don't they, Fuinjutsu? I don't think they would teach anyone Henjutsu before you graduate. How about we ask Iruka? I'm not sure. Raising his hand, Naruto uttered those words. Yes, Naruto, insisted Iruka. Naruto said, why don't we study seals in the academy? About 10 years ago, the council removed it from the curriculum, claimed that students couldn't learn the art, Iruka said. Really, I have a book for beginners and the basics are simple enough, Ino said. Looking up, you could create your own explosive tags and sealing scrolls if you know the fundamentals. That may be, Ino, but the council has a say in what we teach in the academy, Iruka replied. Which council? The ninja council or the citizens? Sasha said. Both, Iruka replied. Why does the citizens council have any say in the academy? Replied Naruto. I'm friends with older ninja and the standards back when they were in the academy were higher. They were, but over the past 10 or 15 years, the citizens council has gained more authority, Iruka remarked. Who are the ninja you spoke with? Naruto remarked, Anko Mitarashi and Hana Inuzuka. Kiba said, you know my sister, with surprise. Yeah, she's a great sparring partner and the Harmaru brothers seem to like me too, Naruto replied. Sakura inquired, who are the Harmaru brothers? My sister's partners like Akamaru and me, but she has 3 partners, Kiba replied. Back on to what we were talking about, why the academy doesn't teach at least the basics of all the ninja arts, said Naruto. Other than seal we do teach the other arts, Naruto, Iruka replied. Not really, Iruka-sensei, you don't teach how to make or counter poisons, what elemental chakra is, medical ninjutsu, and I bet not even half of the students in this class even know what Henjutsu is, Sasha responded. The final one makes Iruka flush, and she says, I don't think that last one is a subject that I can teach in the academy, Sasha. I'll give you that one, but the other ones could be taught, Sasha replied. What is Henjutsu? Sakura inquired. The art of seduction is Henjutsu. Do you have a scroll with you, Naruto? The majority of the students were taken aback by the concept of Henjutsu and turned to gaze at Naruto, wondering why Sasha would ask him for a seduction scroll. Let me look, Naruto said. Pulling out a scroll, he then proceeded to look through the 10 scrolls on his desk, selecting one and throwing it to Sasha. That is a scroll on the basics, Naruto said. Sakura scowled and inquired, were all of these scrolls on Henjutsu, Naruto? Yeah, said Naruto. Sakura remarked, why do you have them? I discovered the topic by chance and thought it was fascinating, thus, in my spare time, I researched it, Naruto remarked. Kiba said, wait, do you practice that subject? As I mentioned earlier, Hana is a fantastic sparring partner, Naruto said, grinning at Kiba. What, you seduce my sister? Kiba practically yelled. No, Naruto said, rolling his eyes, I'm still getting to know the female body, but I can give a killer massage. At that, Kiba calmed down a bit and remarked, you better not. Or what, Kiba, you'll stop me, Naruto said. Hana's a big girl and can make her own decisions. When Kiba snarled at Naruto, Hanabi remarked, that and you love the way she looks in a thong. What have you done with my sister? Kiba asked, banging on his desk. Once more, Naruto rolled his eyes and commanded Kiba to calm down. You must work with bare skin in order to provide a good massage. Kiba continued to growl at him. I always ask if she is okay with something before I start. Getting back on topic, Sasha said, Iruka could give a few lessons on poisons, what elemental chakra is, medical ninjutsu. I will run it by the council and if they give me the go-ahead I will. Iruka sighed. So, go back to studying quietly. Kiba continued to glare at Naruto, and Naruto was pleased that they might have some more engaging classes soon. The rest of the class listened and returned to their books or whatever they were doing. As the sun rose on a Sunday morning, Naruto was the first person to enter the training ground, but he was wearing a different outfit. A dark blue sleeveless shirt with a dark orange X that ran from his shoulders to his hips and featured the Uzumaki swirl on the back. Dark blue pants with a dark orange stripe down the side. And, most significantly, a pair of blue gauntlets on his hands that almost reached his elbow. Sasha was the other person who entered the training ground. She was dressed normally, wearing a black shirt and pants with red trim and the Uchiha emblem on the right side of her chest. The only new items she was wearing were a pair of black gloves and the sword she carried at her side, which was unguarded and had a dark red wood handle and sheath. I got to love the morning air, Sasha remarked after taking a deep breath. Yeah, but we aren't here for the morning air, Naruto said with a smile. It has been a while since we could go all out, hasn't it? Sasasha said with a smile that resembled that of a predator spotting its prey. Tenten is a long-range fighter. She is improving with her sword, and I can blow all of her weapons out of the air. So Hinata would never try to harm me. Yakumo is good if I want to practice breaking genjutsu, and Hanabi is a good taijutsu fighter who is improving at Earth style, Naruto remarked. You have all of those, but you're not on the same level as them. You can present me with the greatest challenge. You sure know how to flatter a girl, Sasasha said, her smile widening. That's one of the benefits of learning henjutsu, Naruto remarked, assuming a loose stance. You don't say inappropriate things as frequently. You still occasionally make mistakes, but that's part of your charm, Naruto-kun, Sasasha said, adopting the Uchiha fighting stance. Following that, they fell silent and began to execute a technique they had learned from Anko. Producing killer intent, not much, mind you, but for someone in the academy, they were doing well, and a moment later, Naruto launched himself. He began with a punch to the head, but Sasasha ducked just in time, attempting a kidney punch before Naruto knocked her hand out of the way and proceeded with a left hook. Sasasha backed up slightly to avoid the blow and unsheathed her sword. Sasasha positioned herself in her kenjutsu stance and prepared to strike, but she didn't have to wait long because Naruto approached her with his gauntlet claws, which were inch-long. Stabbing her, Sasasha thrust forward and dodged right at the same time, and Naruto dodged right as well, using his gauntlets in a slashing motion. At that moment, Sasasha had her blade on the left side of Naruto's neck and attempted to slash his head off. I can always count on you to not pull any punches, Sasasha, said Naruto, with a slight smile. What would that be used for? After saying, I want to be pushed to my limit and try to go further in a spar. Sasasha stabbed the ground with her sword, performed a few quick hand seals, and inhaled deeply. Fire style. Fireball jutsu, Sasasha said, picking up her sword and blowing a fireball at it. The fire instantly sucked into the sword, which now glowed a dark orange. She then swung the sword at the air, and an arc of fire emerged. After moving out of the way of the arc and performing a few hand seals, Naruto said, Wind style. Wind blade. He flattened his hand, and a nearly transparent blade that was 2 feet long emerged from his 4 fingers. Naruto countered Sasasha's sword with his new weapon in a shower of sparks, being careful not to lock blades with Sasasha for more than a second lest she take advantage of it. There were a few differences between Naruto and Sasasha's kenjutsu skills, but they were roughly equal. Naruto was stronger than Sasasha, but Sasasha was more flexible, and Naruto was slightly faster than Sasasha, but Sasasha had better reflexes and her Sharingan. Since Sasasha's sword always took a small piece of Naruto's with it whenever the swords touched, Naruto's wind sword was soon running low on power. Knowing that his sword wouldn't last long, he threw all of his strength into one final blow to get Sasasha's sword away from him. He managed to get the sword out of her hand and onto the ground a short distance away, but as the strength in Naruto's sword diminished and he saw it fall and lose its orange glow, he thought, that was too easy. A few seconds later, he discovered why it was so simple to get Sasasha's sword away from her. Sasasha had released her sword, and now Naruto was overextended and wide open, and the new seals on her gloves gave off a few orange sparks and caught fire. After delivering a two-handed blow to Naruto's chest and uttering the words, Flame burst, Sasasha created a few hand seals and uttered the words, Fire style. Fireball jutsu, which caused a fireball that was roughly 3 meters wide to shoot at the smoke cloud that was Naruto. When Sasasha heard the words, Water style, Water bullet, a ball of water emerged from the smoke and turned the fireball into steam. Sasasha noticed that Naruto's voice had a higher pitch than usual, and she soon discovered why when the steam cleared and she saw Naruto in all her splendor. Sasasha remarked, Well, this is new, as the new, curvy Naruto appeared, with a hole in her shirt between her new B-cups and some damage to the chain mail underneath. Naruto smiled and said, Yami and Hinata have been experimenting with this form and we found out that in this form I have a water affinity. I didn't know that Hinata was into this kind of thing, Sasasha remarked, chuckling a little. As Naruto remarked, Me neither, but you learn something new every day. He rushed towards Sasasha, who was a little taken aback by Naruto's increased speed and the fact that he was no longer fighting in his usual manner, employing the Habi style with his newly discovered flexibility rather than a loose version of the hard fight. With her Sharingan on, Sasasha noticed that Naruto was using a lot of chakra to make himself stronger, faster, and have better reflexes. Sasasha also knew that Naruto could burn 5 times as much chakra as she did, but she would still run out of chakra first. Naruto was enjoying himself with this spar in his female form. A few things changed now that he was a she. First, his flexibility could now compete with Hanabi. Second, he had slightly better chakra control, though not much, and finally, for some reason, his elemental affinity changed from wind to water as a femme Naruto. His control over water was slightly less than his control over wind when he was himself. There were a few disadvantages, such as his weakness in his female form and his wind control drops, but overall, it was a good change to make when he was facing fire elemental opponents like Sasha. Sasha reached for her sword again, but Naruto interrupted her with a seal Fuinjutsu style Hodo 4. Byakurai all Naruto needed was a lightning strike to stop her in her tracks, so he pulled out another seal and uttered, Fuinjutsu style Bakudo 4. Heinawa. Since Sasha was familiar with Naruto's Bakudo, she was prepared for the jutsu to strike. Though somewhat less successful, they operated by blocking the chakra pathway, much like the Hyuga fighting style. While Naruto's Bakudo gunked them up and used some physical restraint, the Hyuga style totally blocks the chakra pathways. In order to prevent Naruto's Bakudo from having an excessively negative effect on her, Sasha left the chakra in her pathways. Naruto only needed a few seconds for Sasha to remove the binding, whereas Hinata and Hanabi could do so in a split second like she had done to Naruto a minute before. Sasha broke the bindings a moment too late and launched herself away by a foot-wide ball of red light with one more seal Fuinjutsu style Hodo 31. Shakaho. With a slightly bloodthirsty grin, Sasha knew that today would be a good day as she hurried to get her sword after waking up a few moments later, a little worse for wear. Sasha took a long bath at home to relieve the kinks in her aching muscles after her battle with Naruto that day. She knew it was never a good thing when she noticed her brother Sasuke sitting in their living room. Looking rather menacing, her brother simply narrowed his eyes at her when she entered the room. "What do you want, Sasuke?" Sasha asked, glancing at her brother. Sasuke questioned, "Why do you hang out with those weaklings?" "Because they are my friends," Sasha said, raising an eyebrow. "Why are you making friends with them?" Sasuke asked with a frown. "You were asking me why I made friends with 4 clan heirs, 2 Yanin, a genin, and a soon-to-be seal master. Is that what you were asking me, Sasuke?" Sasha responded, raising an eyebrow. Her comment somewhat surprised Sasuke, but he went on to say, "Those people will only hold you back." "No, Sasuke, they will not hold me back. They are pushing me forward. They are the best in our class," Sasha replied. Sasuke practically growled at the idea of someone being stronger than him. "I'm the best of the class. I'm going to be Rookie of the Year when we graduate," he said. At his tone, Sasha squinted and walked over to say, "No, Sasuke, you aren't the strongest in our class. You aren't even the strongest in this house." This infuriated Sasuke. He went to attack his sister because he knew he was stronger than her and he was going to show it, but she vanished into black dust the moment his punch touched her. For a brief moment, Sasuke was perplexed as Sasha whispered in his ear, "You couldn't even tell you were already in my genjutsu." Sasuke turned to face his sister and was startled to see that she was wearing the Sharingan, which was nearly comparable to 3 Tomo in her right eye and 2 in her other. She caught his arm this time after he retaliated, saying, "You can achieve much greater results when you train with others and have them push you to your limits." She took the great last Uchiha to his knees by squeezing his wrist to further emphasize her point. After that, Sasha gave him a pitying look and asked, "Is this really all you're capable of?" Sasuke became even more enraged and threw a kunai at her, but she too vanished into dust. Sasuke turned to face Sasha and said, "Apparently that is all you were capable of, Sasuke." Noting that she had remained in the same position as when they first started talking from the start of their conversation, he had been under her genjutsu. As Sasha exited the room, she simply left a stunned Sasuke behind. Sasuke simply stood there, scowling at where she had been. In addition to putting him in a genjutsu, Sasha also put him in one that hurt him a lot. Sasha's illusion was still trying to crush Sasuke's wrist, and he could still feel its grip and phantom pain. The fact that his sister had become stronger than Hima, the last Uchiha, right in front of his eyes and he was blind to it, only made him more irate. To prove that he was the strongest and to exact revenge on his clan one day, he would train harder and longer. At one point, Itachi had declared that he was not worth killing. Did that imply that Sasha was valuable enough to be killed off early in order to render her unthreatening? Did Itachi believe Sasuke would never be able to compete with him? Sasuke was unaware, but the more he considered it, the more he became enraged. Sasha knew there was someone else in her room. As soon as she entered after touching and fully adjusting the security seals in her room, she commanded, "Come out." Sasha could only make out the features of a figure wearing a blank white mask and a long black cloak as it appeared in one of the shadowy corners of her room. The figure said, "Your report," in a monotone. After giving him a brief glance, Sasha said, "There isn't much new to report. Naruto can now fight in his female form and it changes his elemental affinity to water." There are a few other changes, but that is the most important. There is still no way that Naruto will leave the village. He has too much to lose if he left. That hasn't changed. The figure simply nodded and was ready to go when Sasha said, "You might want to watch my brother a little more, as I just showed him the difference in our strength a few moments ago and he wasn't happy about it." The figure appeared to think about this new information for a moment before nodding and leaving the room. After the figure departed, Sasha sneered. As the figure now resembled her brother, few could comprehend the depth of her hatred for that man. She was required to provide information on Naruto, Hinata, Hanabi, Yakumo, Tenten, Ino, their newest group member, and even Enko. She had no choice but to do this. Even though she detested it, eventually, she would murder that man and be free of this burden. Tenten was doing some of her own training. A few weeks after they first met, Tenten and Enko began working together, forming a kind of student-teacher relationship. When it came to weapons, Enko was no slouch. To him, anything could be used as a weapon. Anything can be used as a weapon, whether it's a kunai or a dango stick. Guy was a little tired of allowing his student to train with her, but after a brief conversation with Enko, he realized that occasionally having his kunoichi train under someone else might be a good idea. Guy only needed a few weeks to realize that, given some of Tenten's advancements, the choice was wise. Tenten was among the best kunoichi in the village for the job when it came to hand-to-hand combat. But Enko's lightning affinity was not very helpful because she had a fire and earth affinity. Thus, Tenten's training sessions with Enko were primarily sparring sessions with either her or Kusuburu. Tenten was becoming more comfortable with a number of her weapons, particularly her sword, axe, and bow staff. Additionally, she was acclimating to her newfound capacity to magnify her shuriken and kunai while fighting. She could keep track of 10 to 15 in the air. Any more than that would require too much focus for her to use her weapons and keep them in the air. Tenten reached her current position as a result of that. Following a few weeks of training with Enko, Enko felt Tenten was prepared to be shown her favorite training location, 44, the Forest of Death. Tenten detested this forest at first, but after a few weeks, she understood why Enko had brought her here. Apart from her team's bandit clearing missions, it was the ideal location to gain combat experience. Tenten was now battling a horde of enormous spiders that must have been as big as the typical dog. Tenten found it more difficult to kill the spiders at first. She had to break through the exoskeleton of the spiders with her axe, kanabo, or exploding kunai, but now she could cut through the spiders with her sword and bow staff. Tenten was at the entrance to the spider's den, a grove of extremely dense trees that spanned an area of roughly a city block and had a tunnel web that ran from the ground to nearly the forest canopy. At the moment, she was using her bow staff to smash the spiders. A single spider jumped at her from above, but Tenten anticipated it and cut it in two with a puff of smoke. The person who attempted to exploit the distraction was thrown back into their tunnel web. After another poof and a spin of her staff, Tenten jumped back, and a half-dozen kunai were in the air. Along with a puff of smoke, the kunai shot off at high speed and struck the heads of the spiders she had just knocked back. When Tenten waved her hand forward, a half-dozen spiders were left after they all exploded a moment later. Tenten returned to her swordwork after that. Tenten's sword skills had improved significantly since Enko began training him. As she could see from where she stood, Tenten's opponent was attempting to murder her, which was one of the causes of that. Given that Hayate Gecko and Yugao Izuki were the village's top kenjutsu practitioners, perhaps she ought to introduce Tenten to them, but for the time being, she would merely observe to see what she could ask Tenten to work on next. Tenten had a plan for today, but this wouldn't be the last time she faced these spiders. The spider's incredibly strong silk was one of the things Tenten had observed about them, and it inspired Tenten. What if she used that silk to make clothing? Lighter attacks like kunai, shuriken, and some weapon-glancing blows could likely be prevented by it. Some of her weaker elemental attacks had even been repelled by the silk. She planned to capture some of the spiders today and apply one of her freshly created seals to them. She only needed 4 or 5 spiders, so Tenten seized the opportunity. Her sword poofed away as she cut one final spider in half, leaving a scroll in her hand. As Tenten created the ram seal, she unrolled the scroll and tossed it to the ground beneath a few spiders. After a brief period of the seal glowing, a powerful wind began to blow. One of the spiders was alert enough to jump away as the scroll began to suck in anything above it, but the others were drawn in. Tenten got sucked into the scroll and counted 6, which was more than she had anticipated. Before the spiders swarmed the area once more and jumped to Enko's location, she hurried to pick up the scroll. Enko asked, "What's with the scroll?" after glancing at her. Tenten replied with a smile, "I'd like to see if the silk from these spiders could be used to make some clothing." Enko nodded. It had been done before, and the ninjas were always dressed in excellent clothing. The spiders don't take too kindly to someone taking their silk. "I figured as much, but I have a new seal that might help with that," Tenten said, nodding. Not liking that Tenten might be referring to a slave seal, Anko inquired. What kind of seal? Anko didn't want a student of hers to be looking in on seals like that, so she had something similar on her neck. It's an animal taming seal for unruly animals. I may have to modify it for these spiders, as they are quite a bit stronger than a dog, but I'm confident I can do it, Tenten stated. That was a little better than what Anko had in mind, but it was still a slippery slope, and she warned, be careful with seals like those, you may cause more harm than good. After a brief moment of confusion, Tenten finally understood what Anko might be discussing and uttered the words, somewhat frantically, no. I would never make a seal to make something against its will. Tenten nodded, and Anko went on, I think it's time to wrap up today's training and for you to treat me to some dango, smiling as he said, just be careful. Tenten merely let her head hang. It was expensive to have Anko train her because Anko had a dango addiction that was comparable to Naruto's ramen addiction. In order to return to the village and Anko's favorite dango shop, they left the forest at that point. Hinata was enjoying her final few months and was eager to join a team with her friends as graduation approached in a few weeks. Since she was practically Naruto's secretary and his girlfriend, she had a busy few months. The reason Hinata is now Naruto's secretary is because she discovered a few months ago that Naruto was hiding all of his money in his room beneath some damaged floorboards. Hinata had an incredible facepalm moment. The seals that Naruto sells to the store where 1010 works bring in almost 8 million yen under his floor. Hinata had questioned why there was so much money beneath his floor rather than in a sealing scroll or a bank. Naruto had stated that he had attempted, but he was always expelled from the bank before he could even speak, and he hadn't considered the scroll. Hinata sighed at that. She probably should have anticipated it. Thus, Hinata opened an account, which was the only thing she could do for him. It was an interesting day, Hinata had to admit, as she took all of Naruto's money in a scroll to one of the village's best banks. Children from clans opening accounts wasn't particularly strange, but that was typically after they were ninjas. Hinata immediately approached a more affluent banker and requested a meeting. They granted her request and were delighted to open an account once they saw how much she was depositing. But they had some concerns about how she obtained this money. She made it up that they purchased it because her father wanted her to gain experience handling money. Only around 85 million of that money came from Naruto's work at the steel fan weapon shop. The remainder came from custom jobs he was asked to complete. At some of those jobs, he was still getting paid. The Hokage had given Naruto 2 custom jobs. He received roughly 5 times as many orders as usual for Naruto's scroll and book security clamps, but with 1010's assistance, he managed to deliver them all to the Hokage just a few days before the deadline. Some of Naruto's personalized seals were the other order. The 2 primary ones were the invisibility seal and the barrier seal, which Anko had included in a report explaining the presence of a few new creatures in the village as well as a new recruit for their community. Akusuburu, Anko's new friend. For all of the research and the entire seal array for these seals, Hinata had assisted him in negotiating that agreement for those 2 seals and more for all the scroll and book security clamps. Naruto earned roughly 2 million. Hinata was most surprised by Naruto's other job, which he had obtained from the Hyuga clan when the bank sent her father, Hiyashi Hyuga, a bank statement on Hinata's account. He learned about Hinata's bank account for Naruto. All they were doing was telling him how his daughter was using what they believed to be his funds. Rewind. Hiyashi, who was now seated across from his desk, called Hinata into his office for whatever her father had planned for her. Hinata remained calm and collected. The clan elders were willing to postpone selecting the next clan until a definite winner was identified because Hinata and Hanabi were roughly equal in skill, with Hanabi having superior form and Hinata being faster. Hinata merely awaited her father's words. Hiyashi looked to his daughter and said, I received a most interesting letter today for the bank saying that you have 11.5 million yen in the bank. My question to you is, how did you manage to get that much money? Hinata's eyes widened slightly at that point because she knew she had set up the letters to go to Naruto's apartment and did not anticipate them reaching her father. Hinata asked, why did you get a letter on that account? Rather than responding immediately. With a very severe expression, Hinata's father replied, the letter came with the manager of the bank along with the account information. Now answer my question. After giving her father a long look, Hinata responded, it's Naruto's money, not mine. Hiyashi was a little taken aback by this and naturally asked, how did he come by so much money? Naruto has been selling the seals that he makes to a local weapon shop, and has been even commissioned by the Hokage to make large quantities of seals along with selling some of his more advanced seals, Hinata told her dad. Hiyashi was even more shocked by this. Although he was aware that Naruto was practicing the art of Fuinjutsu, he was unaware that he had progressed to the point where he could begin to profit from it. Naruto was even paid for seals by the Hokage, who recognized his talent. Hiyashi inquired, how many seals is he selling? Hinata thought for a moment and said, he sells 2,000 paper seals and 400 book and scroll security clamps a month to the steel fan weapons shop. The demand for his seals is going up, so I wouldn't be surprised if those numbers go up. Naruto may sell the seal design of those that he sells now to the shop owner and start to sell the shop new seals. I have talked to Naruto about this, but he isn't sure if it is the right move for him to make. It's his decision to make, so I only give him my opinion. The Hokage wanted 2,000 of those book and scroll security clamps and the sale of 2 of his more advanced seals. Why is the account in your name, and what are these security clamps? Was the second question that came to mind as Hiyashi considered this. As she pulled a scroll from her pocket, Hinata said, "The bank wouldn't let Naruto in to make an account, so I made one for him, and me and Hanabi help Naruto if he ever has a problem or question about money. I've more or less become his account manager." The scroll Hinata had just removed had a steel ring around it, and Hiyashi noticed that the sealing script was pounded into the steel. This is a scroll security clamp. They can be set to unlock to blood, chakra, or password and have some durability seals on the metal so someone can't just break or cut them off. Naruto had improved them from the first ones that he made. Those could be thrown into a fire and be pulled out fine, but now they can withstand D and many C-class jutsu. Hinata gave the scroll to Hiyashi when he extended his hand for it. Having some knowledge of seals, he was aware that the round seal hammered into the metal was not the entire seal. If he had to speculate, he would say that the remaining seal was placed inside the metal ring. Possibly while the metal was still hot, the seal would then be mounted on a rod of some sort, and the pliable metal would be shaped around it just to be sure. He turned on his Byakugan and discovered that he was correct. Hiyashi gave Naruto a small compliment by saying, "These are well made," which surprised his daughter once more when she nodded. "I want you to bring Naruto to me for a meeting," Hiyashi said after giving it some more thought. A shocked Hinata tried to come up with every possible reason why her father would want to meet Naruto, and after hearing what they had to say, she felt certain she knew the answer. "Fine, father, what should I say that this meeting is about?" "Tell him to bring his best seals pitch," Hiyashi replied. Form's bottom at the top of Form. Naruto entered the Hyuga clan compound a few days later with white walls and a brown cosmetic-style roof. The compound was stunning, and the majority of its exterior was lined with white lilies. Together with Hinata, Naruto entered the biggest building and took a seat in a room that was roughly the size of his whole apartment. Hinata informed Naruto that he might be selling some of his seals and that he would be showing them to her father. Hiyashi, in order to prepare himself, he took out several scrolls and placed them on the coffee table in front of him. The majority of the coffee table was occupied by Naruto's 2-foot-wide scroll, which was written with several seals. Hiyashi took a few minutes to get ready before entering the room and taking a seat across from Naruto. According to Naruto, "Hello Hyuga-sama. Hinata told me that you were interested in some of my seals," he said honorably. It was evident how hard Sasasha, Hinata, and Hanabi had worked with Naruto. "What level of sealer are you, Naruto?" Hiyashi asked. "I have a few questions for you before we talk about that," and continued when Naruto nodded. After giving it some thought, he had been quite busy with his training in Joba. Naruto remarked, "I'm a mid to high journeyman class sealer." Hiyashi nodded and pondered for a moment what that meant. Naruto could build and break moderately challenging seals. Glancing at the seal on his coffee table, Hiyashi read what he could. The kanji for fire was encased in 3 long diamond shapes that overlapped one another in the middle of the seal. Hiyashi believed that the additional writing on the outside of the diamonds was meant to regulate the fire's intensity. Approximately 1.5 feet across, the final set of seals was a ring that he recognized as a barrier seal. "I am a bit interested in the security seals that you can make. Tell me more about them," Hiyashi responded. Hiyashi noticed the difference between the scrolls on the table and the one his daughter had, so Naruto simply nodded and picked one up from the coffee table, saying, "This is one of the first scroll security clamps I ever made." He then placed the seal on the table in contrast to his daughter's, which had a smaller seal carved into the metal. This one simply had the seal painted onto the metal and had a lot more writing on the outside. Naruto activated the fire seal on the scroll after turning on the tiny barrier seal on the table. "This seal will be fine in a fire this hot, but," he said, referring to the dark red fire. As he said that, Naruto infused the seal with more chakra, causing the fire to change from dark red to red and finally to orange. "It can only withstand a heat of about 800 degrees Celsius. My new ones are better than that though." At that moment, the seal and scroll started to blacken and burn. Naruto turned off the seal, removed the burned scroll, and took the other scroll, which was more similar to the one Hiyashi had already seen, placing it on the seal in the center of the table. "This one can take more punishment," Naruto said, raising the stakes once more. This time, Naruto went straight to orange, then yellow, bright yellow, and finally, white. Only the edges of the scroll started to burn at white, with little else burning. Naruto turned off the seal and turned to face Hiyashi. "This seal can withstand about 1,600 degrees of heat, but not much more," he said. "Is this what you're looking for, Hyuga-sama?" Hiyashi shook his head and said, No, I need something that will protect our clan secrets for a long time, and some of the oldest scroll can't be put under any unnecessary stress. Something that wouldn't even let someone touch the scrolls if they have no right to. Can you make something like that, Naruto-san? Naruto did possess something similar. He used it to safeguard the books and scrolls in his own apartment. However, was he willing to transfer some of his most valuable security seals to a different clan? Before that, however, Hiyashi made a statement that caught my attention. I have a way to copy old scrolls into new ones. At that, Hiyashi arched an eyebrow and asked, "Can you now?" There was a puff of smoke and a foot-long scroll in Naruto's hand as he said, "Hi," pulling out another scroll. "It's a seal's jutsu that I use once in a while when one of my scrolls gets too worn out," he added. Naruto placed another scroll on the coffee table and rolled up the one that was there. This scroll seal was made up of two circular seals the size of the scroll joined by two seal lines. After that, Naruto produced two standard 8-inch scrolls and demonstrated to Hiyashi that one was blank and the other contained only a few of Naruto's notes. Naruto placed a tiny well of ink in the center of the seal and the two scrolls in each of the seal's circles. He then touched the seal on the paper after going through a few hand seals. The ink in the center of the seal was drawn out of its well and flowed across the page without leaving any mark on the seal, and the seal itself glowed until no ink remained. The ink was drawn into the ends of the blank scroll. Naruto took both scrolls and gave them to Hiyashi so he could examine them. Hiyashi noticed that the scroll was exactly like the original, and it even had an ink stain that he thought might have been caused by spilled ink. This suggested that written notes could also be transferred. "This is good, but I would still want those security seals," Hiyashi stated. Naruto sighed at that and said, "There are a set of security seals that would do what you want, but they're some of the best seals I can make and I use them to protect my scrolls. I'm not really itching to let someone else have it." Hiyashi inquired, "What kind of seals are we talking about?" As he turned his right hand over and channeled chakra to it, a keyhole-shaped seal appeared on his hand. Naruto said, "I have a barrier seal on all my shelves. The barrier seal has several functions other than the obvious defense. It can filter out light, make the shelf airtight, and make it so the barrier look like a plane of glass so no one can see what's in the shelves. There is no way to get to the books or scrolls unless you have this seal." Looking at Naruto's hand seal, Hiyashi remarked, "That sounds like it would take a lot of power." "It does, but I managed to get around that," Naruto said, closing his hand and nodding. "How?" inquired Hiyashi. "I have scrolls in my walls that absorb chakra that people naturally give off," said Naruto. "Would that work here? Hyuga pride themselves on their chakra control, and we don't give off as much chakra as normal ninja." Hiyashi was aware of that, but he also knew something else. After giving it some thought, Naruto inquired, "How many people live in the compound?" "About 400, replied Hiyashi. "That should be enough for about 10 to 12 good-sized shelves and a few desks, even if they are Hyuga, and in a pinch you can just pump chakra into scrolls," Naruto stated. "Desks?" inquired Hiyashi. "Some barrier seals to lock the drawer and make if so only people with the seal can take stuff of your desk and so the paperwork will be protected from fire or even spilled drink or ink," replied Naruto. "That's exactly what I was looking for," Hiyashi said, nodding. "How much would that cost?" It's going to be quite a bit. Do you have a map of your compound? I need to know how many chakra scrolls one will need to make." Naruto sighed and rubbed the back of his head. 500,000 yen per desk, 750,000 yen per shelf, 100,000 yen per chakra scroll. And the sealing work to tie everything together took about an additional hour. The total cost of the job, including 10 shelves, 4 desks, and 25 chakra scrolls, was 12 million yen for the next few weeks. Naruto will be very busy. Forms bottom the end of the flashback at the top of form. After completing that task for the Hyuga clan, Naruto had just over 21 million yen in his account. And the other clans were now observing him with curiosity. In the near future, there might be too many jobs for him to go around. He might benefit from learning some clone jutsu. Perhaps there was another clone jutsu that could be effective, as Naruto's wind clones weren't the best. Naruto intended to purchase his apartment building with the money he now had. The apartment complex was only 4 stories high and not very large. There were 4 3-bedroom apartments on the ground floor, 6 2-bedroom apartments on the second floor, and 8 1-bedroom apartments on the top 2 floors. The old bat who owned the building had a room on the ground floor. In order to assist Naruto in persuading the Hokage to allow him to purchase his apartment building, Hinata was walking to the Hokage tower next to him after approaching his office and asking the pleasant young secretary if they could see the Hokage. They entered after she said that they could. Behind his customary pile of documents, they caught a glimpse of the Hokage. Knowing that Naruto and Hinata were approaching, he decided to take a break. Sarutobi said, "Naruto, Hinata, how may I help you today?" After sitting down with Hinata, Naruto uttered the words, "I would like to buy my apartment building." The abrupt statement caught Sarutobi off guard, so he gave it some thought before asking, "Do you have the money for that?" After Naruto gets all the money from my clan for the job that he did, he should have 21 million yen, and some of the other clans have been over to my home to see if Naruto is as good as he says he is, so I wouldn't be surprised if some of the other clans asked Naruto to get some work done, replied Hinata. At that, the Hokage had to nod, even though the seals would preserve rather than destroy his documents. Sarutobi was considering having Naruto place some of the most sophisticated seals he had placed in the Hyuga clan in his office and clan compound. Have you asked what she would sell it for? Not yet. Hinata thought it may look better if the Hokage asked and not two 15-year-olds, Naruto replied. Can you handle the responsibility of owning that apartment? The Hokage had to ask after nodding. We were going to make it a good price for fresh genin as it's close to the training fields. A few of my friends already said that they would move in when I buy my apartment building, Naruto replied. Putting business with friends doesn't always work, hummed Sarutobi. Hinata answered at that. We figured if they could handle the responsibilities of a ninja, they can handle the responsibility of rent. That is a good point, Sarutobi thought to himself. He was aware that Hinata and Naruto had at least considered this choice because they had already raised a few valid points. After another half-hour of conversation, Sarutobi agreed with Naruto and Hinata. At the conclusion of their brief business meeting, he would approach the apartment building's owner with his proposal. Naruto was enjoying his week. The sale of his apartment went through and was less expensive than he had anticipated. He did some remodeling with the remaining funds he believed would be used to purchase the apartment. Some of the other apartments had fallen into disrepair because there weren't many other tenants in the building. Naruto wanted to avoid any surprises when more tenants began to arrive, so he had the plumbing, electrical, and remodeling checked out. Tenten, Shizasha, and even Enko were among his first new tenants, so it was a good start. In addition, Naruto was eager to begin his life as a ninja during the final week of classes at the academy. Naruto isn't reading a ceiling book in class for once because of this. Alright, class graduation is just a week away, so let's make sure everyone has the basic 3 down, Iruka replied. The basic 3, Bunshin no Jutsu, Henge no Jutsu, and Kawarimi no Jutsu, were obviously accessible to all, but Naruto doesn't even perform the Henge no Jutsu correctly, and no matter what he did, he was unable to draw in enough chakra to make the jutsu work for that match. Naruto's transformation is real, even though no one can see it. Henge no Jutsu and the Kawarimi no Jutsu were performed by Naruto when it was his turn, but not before the clones remarked, Iruka, you know I can't do the Bunshin no Jutsu. I'm sorry Naruto, but you have to perform the jutsu to pass, Iruka replied. Naruto inquired, then how did Rock Lee pass? The question caught Iruka off guard, but he responded, Rock Lee was only able to pass because he was Chunin level in Taijutsu and had a recommendation from a Jonin. So all I need is to have a skill at Chunin level and a recommendation from a Jonin, replied Naruto. Naruto went on, great, I can do that. The Kurama clan owes me a favor, they got some Jonin, right? After Iruka nodded. I don't know about that Naruto, Shizasha said, the Kurama clan is a bit of a dying clan there, putting most of their future on Yakumo, bringing them back to their former strength. How about the Hyuga clan? I just did a huge job for them, said Naruto with a frown. Our father would want something in return, Hanabi said, or you could go with Enko. After all the work he had just done for the Hyuga clan, Naruto didn't like that he would have to give them something, even if they paid him. Enko could work, but she's still a special Jonin, even if she is stronger than any 2 average Jonin, Naruto said. That's not all you need, Naruto. You also need a skill at Chunin level, Iruka interrupted. Naruto remarked, I don't need to worry about that. What do you mean? Iruka asked, looking perplexed. Naruto turned back to Iruka and asked, what do you think the big job I did for the Hyuga was? I just reworked the Fuinjutsu security in the Hyuga library for 12 million yen, he said. Except for Naruto's small group, everyone in the classroom was stunned by this. Sasuke became enraged at this and remarked, that's impossible. After glancing at Sasuke, Naruto said, I'm a journeyman class sealer and most Jonin don't have my level of skill. But if you need proof of that, all we need to do is to go to the training fields outside. Naruto then turned to Iruka for a response. Iruka nodded and sighed, saying, I need you to show me anyway. Naruto grinned, and the entire class left for the sparring circle and training fields. How are you going to show your skill to us, Naruto? Iruka responded. Shizasha, would you like to show off a little? Naruto asked, grinding his teeth. Shizasha replied, sure Naruto, and entered the sparring circle. In order to get a clear view of the seal he would be using, Naruto then instructed everyone to move to Shizasha's side of the ring. Everyone noticed that Naruto's arm was now armored after a puff of smoke appeared on it. The blue armor covered his entire arm except for his shoulder, and a gauntlet with claws that were 2 or 3 inches long began at his hand. He had another metal plate and a metal cap on his shoulder. From the gauntlet to the shoulder plate, which was the most noticeable, seals were carved into the armor. Naruto said, "All right, Sasasha, give me your best shot." After using some hand seals, Sasasha yelled, "Fire style! Fireball jutsu," and a 5-foot wide fireball came hurtling toward Naruto to brace himself. Naruto simply raised his arm. The armor's seals glowed and the speeding fireball halted as soon as it was within a foot of Naruto. Iruka saw the ball stop just as he was ready to leap in and pull Naruto out, and he quickly realized why. After applying a sealing solution to the ball's front, the entire fireball was wrapped in 2 seconds and had already shrunk by 1 foot. The fireball vanished after 5 more seconds. Iruka glanced at Naruto and noticed that he wasn't entirely unimpressed. Naruto was perspiring a little and his feet had dug a little trench about a foot long. Iruka was aware that it was due to the fire's heat rather than exhaustion. When Iruka noticed that Naruto wasn't finished, he was going to approach him to ask him some questions, like, "Look, are you trying to give me a heart attack?" Raising his arm, Naruto yelled, "Catch," and aimed a fireball that was roughly a foot wide at Sasasha. Sasasha ignored the approaching fireball and simply batted it away as if it were a beach ball as soon as it was within arm's reach, causing it to break apart as soon as she touched it. Not only was everyone in the class stunned by what Naruto had just done, but Sasasha also batted away a fireball like it was a bothersome fly. "How did you do that?" Iruka approached Naruto and asked the obvious question. With a broad smile, Naruto said to Iruka, "Through the miracle of seals." Sakura pondered everything she knew about seals and asked, "How can seals do that?" She was aware that they could create explosive and flash bombs, seal objects, and set traps. Seals can do anything you want them to as long as you know how to put it into a Fuinjutsu sealing matrix, Naruto stated. "What are the seals on that armor?" Iruka then inquired. Naruto looked at his armor and said, "I have 5 different chakra absorption seals, 1 for each of the elements, reinforcement seals on the metal, 3 chakra manipulation seals, a water storage seal, and weapon storage seals. All of them are tied together into one sealing matrix. It's the best combat seal I have ever made," Naruto grinned. Iruka inquired, "Chakra manipulation seals? They shape elemental chakra that I can't control myself, but I can only fire it back 3 forms, a ball, arcs, and streams of chakra," said Naruto. "Even then the chakra forms aren't very strong, as you saw. Sasasha just batted it aside. Fire is her element." After giving it some thought, Iruka concluded that since no one could control all 5 elements, assistance would be necessary. One particular aspect of Naruto's speech bothered him. "Naruto, the way you said elemental chakra that you can't control would imply that you can control an element." "Ya Iruka, I have finished the first control exercise for wind and water and am working on the second one for wind, which is my primary element," said Naruto. "Where did you even find the exercises to control elemental chakra?" Iruka was perplexed by Naruto's ability to control 2 elements to a degree that is almost unheard of for a Chunin, let alone a Genin. Naruto claimed to have located them in the Uchiha library. Sasuke became extremely enraged by this and almost growled, "Why were you in my clan's library?" Stepping forward, Sasasha declared, "I invited him in." Sasuke glared at his sister and asked, "Why?" Sasasha responded without even considering the glare he was giving her, "I had him dismantle all the security in the library so I could learn from all the scrolls, and as payment I let him learn from them too," she said. Sasuke inquired somewhat intriguedly. He took down all the security, but it made no difference to the scowl he was giving his sister. Sasuke knew what he was doing today, so he dropped the topic for the time being. Naruto gave him a sour look and said, "I did that more than a year ago. The security in there was a joke. None of the seals in there were above journeyman level seals. So is that good enough to pass without Bunshin no Jutsu, Iruka?" Naruto asked, turning to face Iruka. They all returned to the classroom to complete their lessons after Iruka, wearing a somewhat perplexed expression, said, "I'll have to talk to the Hokage about this, but even if I do, you still need a recommendation from a Jonin." Naruto found the recommendation to be simpler than he had anticipated. Naruto approached the Hyuga clan and requested a favor recommendation. Hiyashi Hyuga consented to make the suggestion in exchange for the replacement scroll seal. The week went by quickly, and before Naruto knew it, he was standing with all of his friends, wearing his new leaf headband with pride on his forehead to celebrate becoming Genin. They were all heading out. As everyone went out to celebrate, except for Naruto and Hinata, they would tell Hiyashi that story anyhow. They were going on a date because Hiyashi almost always asks Hinata and Hanabi where they've been if they've been home late, which means they don't get many opportunities to go on dates. Form's bottom Naruto decided to have a picnic in one of the infrequently used training grounds, and he thought the date was going well. They couldn't have cared less about the spilled sake bottle next to them, and the remaining food was on the far end of the picnic blanket. Naruto was currently messaging Hinata's breasts with his hands beneath her shirt, missing his shirt during their particularly intense makeout session. Hinata, on the other hand, had her legs wrapped around Naruto's waist and her arms around the back of his neck. Naruto nearly missed the snap of branches nearby as he was attempting to get Hinata's sweatshirt to move where it was next to her. Naruto saw Hinata freeze when he heard the whistling of weapons in the air. "Naruto," said Hinata, sighing. Naruto said, "Yeah, I hear it. Can you check where they are?" He was getting up and lowering Hinata's shirt as he said this. They were now at the good part. Already on it, Hinata recognized two individuals 150 meters to her right and said, "Naruto, it's Iruka and Mizuki. They're fighting." "They're training?" asked Naruto, looking a little perplexed because, after all, they were in a training ground. Hinata's face furrowed slightly as she peered more closely. Iruka suffered several cuts, including a fairly severe one on his right side. Mizuki, on the other hand, was hardly hurted, just a few bruises, but what caught her eye was the scroll that read, "Forbidden." On his back, Hinata focused on the scroll and began reading. The Hyuga's ability to do this is not well known, and the more she read, the more she understood the circumstances. "No, Mizuki has stolen a scroll with the word forbidden on it. It's about 3 feet long and 10 inches wide," said Hinata. As he puts his own shirt back on after hearing this, Naruto considers his clan scroll, which was roughly that size, and all the secrets it contains. "Are they, Hinata?" he asks. In response, Hinata pointed to their right while straightening her clothing and said, "That way, 160 meters. "I'll go in first and be loud. What for a chance to stick," said Naruto, nodding. Hinata nodded, and they left the direction she had indicated. Iruka was reached in a matter of seconds, and while Naruto remained on the ground, Mizuki and Hinata had already vanished into the trees. When Naruto first arrived at the tiny clearing, he noticed that Mizuki had already drawn his arm back in preparation for throwing a windmill shuriken. Naruto was in the path of the shuriken by the time it had left Mizuki's grasp. Taking a seal from his pocket, Naruto said, "Fuinjutsu style. Bakudo ten Saishi no Sakai, Great Divide." The seal in his hand then burned, and a circle of what appeared to be purple glass, about a meter wide, was placed in the shuriken's path. When the windmill shuriken struck the barrier, tiny fissures appeared in it, and the shuriken remained inside it for about an inch. Iruka saw Naruto as soon as he stepped into the clearing and was about to order him to run when he saw the shuriken stopped by Naruto's barrier. The weapon dropped to the ground at Naruto's feet as the barrier broke a moment later. Naruto screamed, "What the hell are you doing, Mizuki?" at one of his instructors. "Naruto, what are you doing out here?" a startled Iruka asked, glancing at Naruto and the now defunct windmill shuriken. Iruka replied, "Enjoying a night out. How about you, Iruka?" to Naruto without turning around. "Naruto, get out of here. Mizuki is stealing the forbidden scroll. Tell the Hokage where Mizuki is," Iruka said. With a sarcastic tone, Mizuki remarked, "But he was able to pass, so I had to do it myself. Do you really think I will let him get away, Iruka?" Mizuki's original plan was to have Naruto steal this for me as an extra way to pass the exam. Looking a little perplexed, Naruto questioned, "Why me? Have you ever wondered why the village hates you, Naruto?" Mizuki asked, grinning wickedly. Iruka shouted, "No, Mizuki, it's forbidden." At Mizuki, "The fourth Hokage didn't kill the Kyuubi, he put it in you, Naruto. You are the Kyuubi, you are a demon," Mizuki continued, unfazed. Iruka and Mizuki both turned to face Naruto, who was trembling and had his head down. Quickly assuming the worst, Iruka said, "Naruto, it's not true. You aren't a demon. You area." Iruka trailed off when he noticed that Naruto was laughing rather than upset by what had been said. When Mizuki saw this at the same moment as Iruka, he became enraged. "What are you laughing at?" Mizuki yelled at Naruto. After his laughter subsided, Naruto addressed the crowd in the clearing, saying, "I have been practicing Fuinjutsu for 2 years, and you don't think I wouldn't find the biggest and most complex seal I have ever seen and not look to see what it does?" Iruka asked in a slightly startled tone, "Yo, you know already, Naruto." Naruto grinned as he glanced at Iruka out of the corner of his eye. "Ya, Iruka, I found it out about a year ago. Haven't met the Kyuubi yet, but I think that is only a matter of time," Naruto replied. Iruka still appeared somewhat taken aback by everything. Mizuki was simply upset that he was unable to witness Naruto's shocked expression prior to his murder. He was still going to kill Naruto regardless. Mizuki threw his other windmill shuriken in less than a second. As soon as Naruto heard the shuriken click and it came off Mizuki's back, he turned his entire attention to Mizuki. Iruka was shocked as she watched the next few moments. Mizuki intended to cleave Naruto at the age of 2 when he threw the shuriken. As Iruka watched, Naruto simply raised his hand, and the shuriken appeared to slow down a little. Naruto grabbed it by the center ring the next instant and continued to spin it next to him. Mizuki had begun charging Naruto as soon as the shuriken had slipped out of his grasp. When Naruto noticed Mizuki's shocked expression, he simply caught the shuriken as if it were harmless, grinned, and threw it back. Iruka witnessed Naruto toss the shuriken, and it accelerated en route to Mizuki. Although he wasn't a chunin for no reason, Mizuki wasn't prepared for this series of events for the most part. He managed to avoid the speeding weapon. A gash about 8 inches long just under Mizuki's ribs dripped blood onto the grass. Mizuki paused, then looked at the gash while placing his hand there. He sneered as he glanced up at Naruto, who was standing a foot away with his fist cocked back. Mizuki was struck in the face as if Naruto were attempting to strike the Hokage tower from his position. Mizuki struck the tree behind him so hard that the bark cracked. Naruto was holding another seal when Mizuki looked up, and he was saying, "Fuinjutsu style. Bakudo 15 Hitsuji no Kugi. Coffin nails. 8 yellow rods, each about 6 inches long, were then flying at Mizuki. When 2 of the rods struck Mizuki's limbs, he screamed and was knocked unconscious by an electric shock that traveled through his body." To Mizuki's unconscious form, Naruto remarked, "That might have lasted longer if you had taken me seriously, Hinata." Just next to Iruka, Hinata Hyuga fell from a tree, starting him as soon as she was on the ground. She began to examine his wounds to see what she could do. Hinata inquired, "Naruto, do you have any supplies with you?" With a puff of smoke, Naruto handed Hinata paper and ink and simply grinned, saying, "Don't I always?" Iruka asked, "What are you two doing way out here?" as she glanced between Naruto and Hinata. When asked, "We wanted to get some privacy for our date," Naruto grinned. "Date?" Iruka asked, shifting her gaze from Naruto to a flushed Hinata riding a seal. "Yeah," Naruto replied, still grinning broadly, "and we were just getting to the good part." Iruka said, "Good part," with a hint of interest in his tone. Naruto's smile turned slightly lecherous as he said, "Why yes, Iruka, the part where Hinata was on her back while I played her like an instrument. She was making the loveliest of music." "Naruto, you weren't. Do I need to give you the talk?" Iruka asked, looking a little worried. "No Iruka, we haven't done the thing you're thinking of, but with me studying Henjutsu and quite a few girls to try it out on, well, I know plenty of ways to make a woman feel good," Naruto replied. "As for giving me the talk, I don't think you can tell me anything I don't already know, unless you want to give me some tips, and maybe I can give you some too." That final bit made Iruka flush, so she turned to Hinata, who was still working on the seal she was creating with a marshmallow roasting blush. Iruka made the decision to put the topic aside for the time being so Hinata could carry on without fainting. Hinata only needed a few more minutes to create a few seals to lessen the discomfort and begin the healing process of the wounds. After tying Mizuki up and deactivating the seal, Naruto took him to the Hokage tower along with the Forbidden Scroll. The newly minted genin were waiting for their teacher in their class after the weekend. Iruka arrived at the final day of classes for these students in a matter of minutes. Iruka smiled, and almost everyone in the room smiled back. "I would like to congratulate everyone on passing and becoming genin of the village," she said after saying, "Now that you are genin, you will be put into their man teams." Iruka started assigning teams. Team 7 Sasasha, Naruto, and Sasuke, you will be with Kakashi Hatake. Iruka stated Sasasha knew that being on a team with her brother would be a pain in the ass, and Hinata was a little bummed not to be on Naruto's team. Naruto is aware that he and Sasasha could get along, but given everything she has told him about her brother, this might not be enjoyable. Sasuke simply glared at Naruto and his sister, not pleased to be on a team at all. Team 8 will be Hinata, Sakura, with Yakumo, an apprentice of Kurenai with Kurenai. Iruka said being on a team with Kurenai and Yakumo made Hinata a little happy. Sakura wondered how the new girl was and was disappointed not to be on Sasuke's team. Team 9 is still in circulation. Team 10 is Ino, Shikamaru, and Shoji with Asuma Sarutobi. Iruka went on the fact that she wasn't paired with someone who knew what she could do turned Ino off. She grinned as she gave that some more thought. Even though Shikamaru and Shoji were unaware of her new strength, she could always demonstrate it to them. The smile on Ino's face made Shikamaru shudder, but he and Shoji were glad to be on the same team. And Team 11 will be Kiba, Shino, and Hanabi with Hana Inuzuka. Iruka said Hanabi knew that Hana would make a good teacher and was comfortable with her team. Kiba only suspected that his sister was now a Jonin, while Shino remained as stoic as ever. Iruka wished the teams luck after they were formed and departed the room. Teams left the room one by one, and by the time 20 minutes had passed, everyone except Tree Genin had left. At first, Naruto and Sasasha were unconcerned sitting beside Sasasha. Naruto read a scroll he had brought, and Sasasha simply placed her feet up on the desk in front of her and closed her eyes. Naruto became very irritated after the first hour. Currently, he could be working on his next commission of seals, managing his apartment building, teaching 10 more Fuinjutsu, driving Hanabi insane in his apartment's basement, creating new weapons, or transforming Hinata into a pile of mush. Important things like how he was an hour late and not waiting in a classroom for his new teacher. Sasasha grinned when Naruto bent over and whispered something to her. She took out her violin, which she always carried in a seal. A moment later Naruto closed his eyes and leaned back as she started to play, allowing the music to fill his head. Snorting, Sasuke glanced at his sister out of the corner of his eye. Why she had adopted such a pointless pastime. Naruto just relaxed beside Sasasha as she played for the next hour. All hell broke loose when the doors opened. A man with silver hair walked in then, and when Sasasha stopped playing, the room seemed to shimmer as soon as he saw it. The man Naruto, Sasasha, and Sasuke thought was Kakashi broke the illusion, but not before Naruto sealed it with a single hand. Kakashi merely paused to survey the space. The door he was standing in was the target of 5 kunai launchers that were positioned throughout the room. Reflexively, Kakashi left the room and shut the door to avoid being in any of the 5 fire lines. He bumped into something while attempting a little leap back. He had been kept in the room by a barrier. 5 shots were fired simultaneously. At that precise moment, a scattering of several balls the size of large marbles was fired by each kunai launcher in a cloud of glitter. They struck Kakashi and the surrounding area. At the now glinting man, Naruto nearly toppled over. Sasasha merely grinned and chuckled. The fact that his sister and the class idiot had set up a trap that caught a Jonin in the room he was in without his knowledge caused Sasuke's eyes to narrow. It made him even more irate. "My first impression is I don't like you," said Kakashi, who was beaming from head to toe as he gazed at the 3 genin in the room. After controlling his laughter, Naruto pointed at Kakashi and said, "You don't like us, you're the one 2 hours late, some of us have other things to do." "Oh?" Kakashi asked, turning to face Naruto. Naruto just snorted, "Yeah, I need to finish a job I have for the steel fan shop, go over the utilities with Hinata on my apartment building I own, and I have some meetings with some new tenants in the apartment." When Kakashi said, "You own an apartment building?" "Yeah, bought it a few months ago. I'm a good half hour late now, but Hinata is probably taking care of it," said Naruto. After giving it some thought, Kakashi shrugged and said, "Meet me on the roof." That was followed by a flurry of glitter and leaves. Together, Naruto and Sasasha rose and left the room, Sasuke trailing slightly behind them. After a minute, they arrived at the roof to find their new instructor reading an orange book while gleaming in the afternoon sun. "Okay, let's begin with some interdictions, your likes, dislikes, hobbies, and dreams for the future," Kakashi stated. Sasasha said, "How about you go first, sensei?" Finally, Kakashi asked, "Me? Well, my name is Hitaki Kakashi. As for my likes and dislikes," when he concluded, Kakashi concluded with a smile, "My dreams for the future, Hama, I have lots of hobbies," she said. Sasasha snorted and thought, "Great, we found out his name. I suppose I'll go next. My name is Sasasha Uchiha, and I enjoy playing the violin and training. I don't like a few things. I like to read and play the violin as hobbies, and I'll keep my dream to myself. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and I enjoy training with my friends, eating ramen, and practicing Fuinjutsu." Naruto continued with a broad smile. Naruto concluded, "I don't like the 3 minutes it takes to make ramen, and I want to be Hokage. I don't like anything. I dislike too many things to list and don't have a dream but an ambition to bring my clan to its former glory and kill a certain person." Naruto had a good idea of what Sasuke was talking about, but he couldn't understand why Sasuke was so focused on the killing part, and Sasasha had to stop herself from rolling her eyes at that. After all, what does Uchiha not want to see Itachi die? She simply wasn't going to make that her only reason for living. Now that introductions are over, let's start our first team exercise. Well, I have one well-adjusted Avenger, a teen with a big, and an Avenger who is not well-adjusted at all, Kakashi thought to himself. "So what are we doing first?" asked Naruto, eager to get started. "Survival training," asserted Kakashi. Everyone was simply perplexed by this, and Naruto objected, saying, "We already completed survival training in the academic setting. This training will be different as you're going to be against me," Kakashi stated. Sasasha chimed in, "How is that going to be any different? I mean, you're strong, but it's still just training." "I'm glad you asked, because what makes this different is that out of the 30 graduates that passed, only about a third of them will become real genin," Kakashi replied with a grin on his face. This startled Naruto, who yelled, "So what was the purpose of the academic test?" "Oh, that was just to select the students that had the potential to be genin," Kakashi said, waving Naruto away after saying, Be at training ground 7 at 8. Kakashi turned around and departed in a puff of smoke and glitter, leaving 3 thinking genin behind. You will be tested on training field 7 tomorrow, so bring all your ninja gear and avoid eating breakfast or you'll throw up. After their recent meeting with their new sensei Asuma, Ino asked the rest of her team to stay for a moment. If we are going to be on a team together, you need to know what I can really do, Ino said, turning to Shikamaru and Choji. Shikamaru, who may be lazy but not stupid, narrowed his eyes at that moment. Shikamaru was a little confused, but he knew that Naruto and his small group were stronger than they were letting on at the academy. As evidenced by the demonstration a week ago, he also knew that Ino was now training with them and had been for about 6 or 7 months, so it's possible that Ino was stronger than them because they hadn't trained together in a long time. Asking, "What do you mean?" Choji said. With that, Ino made the tiger seal and said, "Release? You're going to find out. I'm going all out from the get-go, so be ready," Ino replied. Choji simply raised his hands and uttered, "Wait, what's happening?" "The 2 of us are going to fight Ino," Shikamaru said, glancing at Choji as he knelt down and formed the rat seal. Choji looked from Shikamaru to Ino, who was in a fighting stance he had never seen her in before. He was still perplexed, but he followed Shikamaru's instructions. "Take this seriously, Choji." They were only a few feet apart, but Ino was on top of them in a matter of seconds after she saw that they were both prepared and charged. Choji raised an arm to block Ino's initial blow, but her arm curved around the block. Ino hit the middle of Choji's chest, which hurt much more than he anticipated, but he powered through as he retaliated. Shikamaru also struck with his shadow as they both struck, and Ino leaned to the left to avoid both Shikamaru's shadow on the ground and Choji's punch as she delivered a few more blows to Choji's outster. Shikamaru threw a trio of kunai and Ino, forcing her to jump back, and Choji returned to Shikamaru's side more quickly after a minute of Ino dancing out of the way of the shadows and punches and coming in for quick strikes. "She wasn't that good at taijutsu before," Choji remarked, keeping his gaze fixed on Ino. "She's striking at the pressure point, not hard," Shikamaru said, simply nodding in order to make it hurt even more. "She is also concentrating all of the force of her punches on just one of her knuckles." Choji nodded when he saw that last detail. After that, they watched Ino remove a pair of fans, which were white with dark purple ends that matched her clothing and featured a vine-like pattern with multiple purple flowers that matched her clothing color. As though holding a sword rather than a fan, Ino lifted one of her fans and brought it down a nearly invisible blade of wind, then sped out of the fan, forcing Shikamaru and Choji to split apart to avoid the blade. Ino then pursued Choji once more. When Choji and Ino were back in close combat, Ino used her fans to strike him. Choji had to admit that it worked because the fans had a sharp point when folded up, so he could now take the blows without avoiding them or knocking them away. Choji was doing his best, but Ino seemed to be getting faster and faster every minute. Shikamaru was doing his best to help him, throwing kunai and shuriken at Ino to take some of the pressure off of Choji because he had given up on using his shadow and knew that Choji was superior to him in close combat. The toe-on-one exchange of blows continued like that for another 2 or 3 minutes, but Choji had a bit of a problem where he could barely lift his arms to block anymore. At that point, Ino went for another sword strike with her fan, and a blade of wind came at Choji intent on cutting him in half. He managed to get just out of the way as the blade of wind cut a trough in the ground that was 6 feet long and about 4 inches deep. They all halted at that point. Shikamaru didn't appear much worse for wear, but he wasn't the victim. Choji, on the other hand, was gasping for air and had half a dozen shallow cuts on each arm from Ino's fans. Ino had been hit here and there, but they were all glancing blows, and while she was breathing a little deeply, it was controlled, in contrast to Choji's way of gulping air. Knowing the conversation would be dull, Shikamaru chose to strike up a discussion by asking, "What's a nice pair of fans you have there, Ino?" Looking at the fans, Ino grinned and said, "Thanks, Naruto made them for me." Choji questioned, "What are they made of?" He had observed during their altercation that they were emotionless, that he could feel very little when he knocked them aside, and that they had the appearance of steel. "I don't know," Ino replied, "but they seem to brink my chakra when I give it to them." Ino had attempted the same thing a few times with a kunai, but it always took 3 or 4 times as long to just coat them and forget about sending out wind blades. She had just completed the first wind control exercise a few days ago, and that was only because she had Naruto's assistance. She was delaying the next step in wind control or any other element, as she still had a lot to learn from Anko. "We have a lot to talk about, don't we?" Shikamaru sighed. Ino simply smiled and nodded, and Shikamaru sighed once more. After meeting his new sensei, Naruto went home to check in with Hinata, who had attended the meetings he had missed, and they went over the utility bills to get a clear idea of what they would be each month. After that, Naruto went to the basement to check on the other Hyuga in his building. He arrived to find Hanabi working on something that looked somewhat like a cart but was smaller and lacked a place to hawk up a horse instead. There was a ton of metal in the front of the cart, and he recognized one thing. One of his chakra storage scrolls was fastened to the large piece of metal. Hanabi was working on the large chunk of metal, and her earth spirit, Barakasuda N, appeared as an excessively detailed earth golem standing at around 6 feet tall and resembling a man carved out of glassy black stone. The golem's eerie feature was its empty, all black eyes. Barakasuda N, who wasn't much of a talker, was putting on a large wheel on the cart that was made of what Naruto believed to be rubber. He nodded to Naruto as he worked on the wheel. Hanabi was too busy working to notice him coming down the stairs, so she was facing away from him and the stairs when Naruto nodded back and approached her. He put his arms around her, just under her chest, and rested his head on her shoulder. Hanabi jumped a little, but she quickly calmed down because only she and Naruto had the key and the password seal to enter the basement, and Barakasuda N hadn't dressed her as an intruder. As Naruto had a better look at what she had been doing to his basement, he asked, "What are you working on now, Hanabi?" "A motorized cart. No horse needed," Hanabi replied, letting her hands loosen up in Naruto's grasp and putting one on his hands and the other around his neck, smearing oil and grease on Naruto's hands and neck. After he hummed, Naruto surveyed the basement, which he had allowed Hanabi to use as her personal workshop. Hanabi had arranged a number of tables with every gadget she could find, a few bookshelves stacked against the wall with books and journals, and the broken computer he had given her, which was not yet operational, as the final item in the room. Naruto concluded with a small query. "You've been busy, Hanabi, but I think you need a break. You have been down here since finishing up with your new team." Hanabi responded, "Yeah, I have, but I'm almost done with the cart," pushing Naruto aside to reach a wheel, then sitting in the seat at the wheel and pressing a button that caused the motor to start with a little roar. Hanabi said, "It's about ready for a test run outside," as she exited the vehicle and approached the front of the cart to check for strange vibrations or any issues. "I think you've worked enough today," Naruto said. Approaching her side, he then took her hand and dragged her to a small couch on one side of the basement. "It's time to relax and maybe a shower," he said, finishing settling Hanabi on the couch without her resisting. After discovering that no one was waiting for them when Naruto, Sasasha, and Sasuke arrived at the 7th training field 10 or 15 minutes before 8 the following morning, they all took seats close to the 3 stumps in the field and waited for the next 30 minutes or so, after which Naruto came up with a plan and he and Sasasha vanished into the woods. Sasuke didn't see Naruto or Sasasha for the next 3 hours, but he knew they were still at the training ground because of the noises in the woods. Twigs breaking, tree branches creaking, and leaves rustling. This made him wonder what they were doing, and he logically concluded that they were setting up traps, but before he could give it much thought, his new sensei Kakashi appeared in a puff of smoke. Kakashi asked, "Where are your teammates, yo?" As he peered out from the top of the fence and saw only Sasuke on the field, Sasuke turned to face the trees nearby, and as he did, Naruto and Sasasha emerged from the trees, with Sasasha wearing a neutral expression and Naruto glaring at Kakashi. Both of them were dressed differently than they had in the academic setting. Sasasha wore a black vest and pants with red trim and the Uchiha crest on the back, long-sleeved mesh armor, black gloves, and red and black kunai and shuriken pouches on her waist and legs, along with a sword whose red wood was nearly blood red across her back. The last thing that everyone in the field saw of Naruto was the Fuinjutsu design that ran up and down both of his arms. Naruto was also wearing a dark blue vest with a burnt orange X design covering the front and back, along with a red Uzumaki swirl on the back. He was also wearing dark blue paints with the same burnt orange color running down the side with tan kunai and shuriken pouches. "Now that everyone is here, we can get started," Kakashi said, pointing to the 3 teenagers as he removed 2 bells. "The test today is to get one of these bells from me," he said, jumping down from the fence and making his way to the 3 logs buried in the ground after observing all of his new potential students and getting a closer look at the sword and the Fuinjutsu. "You'll be sent back to academia if you don't," Kakashi stated. "Why are there only 2 bells?" Naruto inquired, glancing at the pair. With a smile on his face, Kakashi responded, "It's so one of you is garneted to go back to the academe." Naruto and the others exchanged angry looks, and Kakashi went on, "Use any weapons you like, and if you don't come at me with the intent to kill, you won't get a bell. You have told me that we will start at noon. Do you have any questions?" he said. "Start," after noticing none. Naruto simply stood there grinning at Kakashi after 2 of the 3 teenagers vanished into the woods. "You know, compared to the others, you're a bit wired," Kakashi remarked. When he heard that, Naruto simply laughed and remarked, "Like we can really hide from you." "A genin hiding from an experienced jonin shouldn't be possible," So Kakashi had to raise an eyebrow at that because he was correct. He then swept his senses over the field and discovered Sasuke 40 yards away in a tree watching him, and Naruto. Sasasha was Kakashi looked around once, twice, and a few more times but couldn't find any sign of Sasasha. He turned back to Naruto and saw him smile a little wider. Kakashi's eyes narrowed at that. "You know, Sensei, I should thank you. This test is perfect for me," he said. "I mean, if you had given us another kind of test. When you arrived, I was just going to set up a few traps for you, but you took too long. You really gave 2 journeyman class sealers 3 hours to build the battlefield, Sensei?" As Kakashi's eyes widened at what he said, he slammed his hand into the ground and felt as though he had gained 300 pounds. Naruto hurried him and proceeded to throw a few seals. The taijutsu exchange lasted for about a minute before Kakashi tried to make some room with some shuriken, and that's when he realized what was keeping him so wanted down. Magnetism. Naruto came at him with a speed a Chunin would be proud of, and he stared with a jab at Kakashi's head. Kakashi saw it coming and was still able to get out of the way, even now at more than twice his normal weight, but Naruto didn't give him an inch. The armor on his body was pulling him down, making him appear heavier, and as soon as he threw the shuriken, not a foot from his hand veered down and stuck to the ground. He immediately removed all of his kunai and shuriken pouches from his body, losing roughly 50 pounds while fighting Naruto. Kakashi thought of a way to stop the Fuinjutsu that Naruto had set up while still fighting. It had to be some sort of barrier seal set in this particular area, since he could see that Naruto was wearing a chainmail shirt. He knew that the field at least went into the trees and that Naruto needed a counter seal on him to stay unaffected. However, since Naruto wasn't using any weapons, the seal most likely only affected items on his person. After learning that this was what Naruto wanted, Kakashi replaced himself with a log and went into the trees to locate the edge of the seal and remove the seals holding it in place. As soon as he crossed the tree line, about 4 dozen light blue tendrils sprang up and attempted to ensnare him. About a dozen of them succeeded in wrapping around his legs and one arm while he was in the air. Jumping away from the others, they pulled him back down, and while he heard something burning, he was surrounded by a shooting gallery of purple spheres. The firing lasted only a few seconds, and after it stopped, there were only a few direct hits on his legs. He couldn't really move them because they were tied to the ground, and a few glancing blows on his body. Despite his limited movement, Kakashi managed to dodge or block most of the 50 purple balls of energy that were coming at him. He used his hands to rip the tendrils off his legs and moved into the trees a little more cautiously. Sasasha was just at the tree line, between 2 trees, just watching, and she was in plain sight too, or at least she would be if it weren't for the 2 seals that concealed her. The first was a seal on the ground that concealed her gifts from most senses. In this seal, she couldn't be heard, smelled, or sensed by chakra most of the time, but Hana had been very helpful in creating it. The second seal, which was tied between the 2 trees where Sasasha was a sheet that concealed her from view by taking a picture of what was behind it and changing that image in real time. Its flaw was that the person standing behind the sheet didn't more in real time. Naruto had made this seal as a way to conceal a camping tent in a plain sight. Sasasha was looking through the sheet, watching the battle between Kakashi and Naruto with her Sharingan on, learning as much as she could about Kakashi's fighting style. The magnetic seal had confused him a little, but he was still not taking them seriously, so she would take what she could. Her Sharingan wasn't finished yet, but it was progressing, and the more she watched, the easier it would be to guess what Kakashi would do next. When Kakashi struck the first set of traps, she emerged from behind the seal and approached Naruto, asking how he was going to seal away all the weapons that Kakashi had thrown away when she ran at the trees. She activated all the seals in the trees, which were off in case he felt them early, or Sasuke set them off early if any hit Sasuke now. She wasn't going to lose any sleep over it. Sasasha approached Naruto and inquired, "Is there anything positive?" "Not much, just the basics. Kunai, shuriken, wire, a few paper bombs, and this," Naruto said, removing an orange book and holding it out to her. Sasasha accepted it, realizing it was from the Icha series, which, for some reason, was housed in the Uchiha Library's Henjutsu section. As she threw the book, Sasasha hummed to herself, "We might be able to use this." "Really?" said Naruto. "It's signed by the author, so could threaten to destroy it, and if nothing else we know that he's a pervert and me and you have some experience with Henjutsu," Sasasha said, nodding as she turned to the inside cover and showed it to Naruto. "I can work with that." Naruto smiled. "First, let's start with that." He felt the magnetic seal drop as Kakashi presumably removed one of the seals supporting it. That made Sasasha smile as well. "What are you thinking of?" Kakashi returned to the field a short while later to find Naruto and Sasasha standing there, with Sasasha behind him and holding out her violin. He looked around the field and saw that they had taken away the weapons he had dropped, indicating that he had misjudged them. It was a pretty good idea, and most genjutsu users have a system like that. Sasha was likely going to use some genjutsu with her violin to throw him off, and Naruto was going to attack him and defend Sasha. With a spinning Sharingan, Sasha placed her violin on her shoulder and declared, "Ready for round 2, sensei." Taking this more seriously, Kakashi assumed a loose stance and noticed that Naruto had another surprise in store for him. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," he said, while holding a cross with his middle and index fingers on his hand, and 7 clones materialized all around him. Kakashi asked, "Where did you learn that?" as his eyes narrowed at the Kenjutsu. With a smile, Naruto remarked, "I learned it while catching a traitor." He then performed another hand seal, and smoke billowed out once more. Rewind. After telling the Hokage what had happened with the traitor, Hinata and Naruto returned to his apartment. Although Naruto wasn't complaining, they had both received the pay for a B-rank mission, and it was noted on their records. Naruto assumed they would resume where they left off, but Hinata went to his room's desk, grabbed a pen and scroll, and started to write herself. Naruto approached her from behind, gave her a gentle hug so as not to interfere with her writing, and kissed her neck while reading over her shoulder. "Have I told you how much I love you tonight, Hinata?" said Naruto, grinning as he read each one in turn. After halting her writing and turning around in Naruto's embrace, Hinata said, "Yes, you have, Naruto, but I can always hear it again," before kissing him and returning to their pre-improvised mission activities. Following the removal of the smock, 7 women of various sizes and shapes appeared in place of the 7 Narutos. One of them resembled Naruto if he were a girl, while the other 2 were on either side of Sasha and looked equally good. One had long black hair like a 30-year-old woman with short red hair and an athletic build, and the clone next to that one looked like her daughter with black hair like her mother and a body that seemed to be as good as her mother. "So 2 will stay back and protect Sasha and 5 will come at me, and while they attack Sasha will be using genjutsu as support," Kakashi thought. Looking at the clones' formation, this is a good plan and it shows teamwork, at least for these 2, but why are they all women? When Sasha began to play, Naruto attacked, and Kakashi was about to attack one of the clones when he discovered why they were all female. The woman, who was about 30 years old, suddenly appeared nude in front of him, distracting him for a half-second, causing him to block the punch because he was too preoccupied to avoid it. A moment later, Kakashi brought the genjutsu, and the women were clothed once more, but Sasha continued to play, and the twins were nude as they threw kunai at him. Kakashi stepped aside to avoid the kunai and brought the genjutsu, but without any distraction, he noticed that the kunai were glowing and replaced himself with a log a second before they exploded, and the log was ripped to splinters. "This might be more difficult than I anticipated," Kakashi thought as he turned to face Sasha, who was staring at him with her Sharingan spinning, and the 2 girls who were meant to be protecting her were making out in front of her before their clothes disappeared once more, before the clones were on top of him once more. Kakashi told them to come at him with the intent to kill, but as he grew accustomed to fighting naked clones, other things started to change. For example, a clone that appeared to throw a shuriken but was actually a moment after a broken genjutsu ended up throwing a windmill shuriken that nearly took his head off, or another clone that was closer than it appeared and got a good hit in. Kakashi was losing blood at the real-life porn being performed in front of him, but the nude clone genjutsu was no longer an issue. Rather, it was the 2 clones near Sasha, who no longer needed a genjutsu to be nude because they were into some petting. Though Kakashi couldn't bring himself to pop to the 2 clones near Sasha, his inner pervert wouldn't let him. After all, what harm are they doing? He popped the clones one by one, leaving only the women around 30, the 2 clones near Sasha, and Sasha herself. Kakashi said, "I have to say you 2 have made this more interesting than I thought it would be," glancing at either Naruto or Sasha at that moment. Sasha put her violin away and stopped playing, and Naruto dropped the 30-year-old woman's disguise. Sasha turned to her brother and said, "Enjoy the show, Sasuke." With a smile. "Why thank you, Kakashi-sensei. I have been working on my genjutsu for a long time, and I find it easier to make more layers to it by using different mediums." When Sasha held out a hand to Naruto, Naruto scowled and said, "That proves nothing." Sasha simply raised an eyebrow at him and said, "That was me out there, not a girl. It proves nothing." Naruto sighed, "Fine," and pulled out his wallet, counting out a few bills and slapping them into her hand. Kakashi had to look at Sasuke at that point and noticed a flush on his face as he gazed out into the field. At that, Kakashi arched an eyebrow and inquired, "What was that about?" As she counted and pocketed the money, Sasha remarked, "We had a bet whether my brother was a guy or not, and I won." "Oh come on," brash Naruto said, "he has all those girls and he doesn't even look at them. I think the only reason Sasuke is embarrassed is that it was me nude out there." Kakashi blushed when he realized he was staring at 2 men, not 2 attractive women. Sasuke threw a number of kunai and shuriken at Naruto in a fit of rage that anyone would believe he was gay. He also yelled, "You thought I was gay?" Sasuke gritted his teeth as Naruto merely glanced at the approaching weapons, all of which missed him by inches. "Of course I did. You had Amy, Sakura, and Ino after you and you won't even give them the time of day. Well, you used to have Ino," he muttered. Naruto concluded. "I wonder if I can change my bet in the class pool." "Class pool," Sasuke uttered, his teeth clenched. At this point, Kakashi was fighting a losing battle without laughing, but he didn't miss the fact that the weapons that were aimed at him didn't just miss. They veered off course a little. Naruto simply looked at him and said, "Yeah, all the boys in the class have a pool going on. When you're going to come out of the closet?" Sasha remarked. "Sasuke came down and get out here and help us." "Why should I?" Sasuke interrogated. Sasuke gritted his teeth harder but came out into the field at the piece of blackmail his sister had over his head. "Because if you done, Naruto will win the class pool when I tell the class that you were perving on 2 of Naruto's clones," Sasha said with a slightly bloodthirsty smile. It wasn't traditional teamwork, but he could work with it. They passed just barely. At that, Kakashi grinned a little.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.